Chapter 1575. The road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. Although Feng Qingshan had accidentally discovered the eternal heart lamp technique, perhaps because the aura of the everlasting lotus did not belong to the myriad worlds and could indeed penetrate the void stone. This was indeed a huge surprise for him. Unfortunately, the surprise came to an end. After the initial shock, ecstasy, and excitement, Feng Qingshan came back to his senses and realized that things were not as simple as he had imagined. He could not immediately rely on the eternal heart lamp technique to make a fortune. This was because he did not know whether it was because the everlasting lotus was strong, but the boundless void law had the geographical advantage, or because Feng Qingshan's cultivation was too weak, or because the everlasting lotus was too far away from the boundless void, or because of other reasons. In any case, he could penetrate the void stone, and he could indeed feel the internal situation of the void stone. He was not like others who were blind and could only rely on so-called experience to try their luck. However, what he felt was specious and not real. He could not truly feel what was inside the void stone. It should be known that the fake void stones, be it the blind stone or the man-made void stone, were not empty. Some of them did contain something, but the things they contained were not valuable. Although Feng Qingshan's chances of obtaining a genuine void stone were much higher than others, if he couldn't clearly sense the situation inside the stone, it would still be very risky for him. After all, even the cheapest void stone was a medium LV2 supreme treasure. Although others would lose 9 out of 10 gambles, it would be difficult for Feng Qingshan to bear the risk, even if he lost 5 out of 10 gambles. The key now was that other people saw the void stone as a mountain and water as water. They saw the void stone as a square stone. Whether it was genuine or not, whether there was anything inside, or whether there was anything good inside, they had no idea. However, Feng Qingshan was slightly better. Through the eternal heart lamp, he could see that the mountain was not a mountain, the water was not water, and he could see some clues from the void stone. However, it was like looking at flowers in the fog or looking at the moon in the water. It was not real at all. Damn it! Feng Qingshan cursed in his heart. He had been happy for nothing. This feeling was like entering a treasure mountain only to return empty-handed. It was simply terrible. If you couldn't feel it at all, then forget it. Anyway, at the beginning, Feng Qingshan didn't have much hope. However, it was different now. He actually saw a glimmer of hope. That was fine. The most important thing was that there was only one point. It seemed right, but it was actually wrong. It was like a dream. Although it wasn't to give people hope and then make them despair, it was just to keep them in suspense. The good stuff was right in front of them, but they couldn't eat it. Of course, if Feng Qingshan's thoughts were known by others, they would definitely spit on his face. Although he still couldn't see clearly, at least he had improved a lot compared to the others, right? As long as his luck wasn't too bad, he would definitely win. It can only be said that a man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. In the beginning, he was completely clueless and didn't have any requests. But now that he could see some clues, his desire wasn't satisfied. Looks like there's only one way left. Feng Qingshan squinted his eyes into a line. After calming down, Feng Qingshan's mind was filled with thousands of thoughts. Since the eternal mind lamp was useful, it meant that the problem wasn't with the technique, but with the person who cast it. Just like a spiritual treasure, its power would be different in the hands of different people. Even if it was a level 4 cardinal treasure, the power in the hands of a divine emperor and a divine emperor would be worlds apart. Therefore, if he wanted to investigate more clearly, the only way was to increase the power of the eternal mind lamp. There were 2 ways to increase the power of the secret technique. One was to increase his cultivation level. When his cultivation level was high, the power of the secret technique would naturally increase. However, this obviously couldn't be done in a short period of time. The second way was to increase the power of the secret technique itself. Of course, it wasn't to increase the grade of the secret technique. This wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time either. The only way that Feng Qingshan could think of was to replace the lamp wick with a real eternal lotus seed to increase the eternal Taoist aura. Anyway, what was really effective was the essence of the everlasting lotus. The stronger the lamp wick, the stronger the mind lamp. The stronger the mind lamp, the stronger the everlasting lotus aura. Previously, it was said that they complemented each other. Go! Fang Qingshan took action immediately. With a thought, the timeless arc vibrated. In the core area of the eternal lightning pool, a lotus seed rose. Comparing the lamp wick of the eternal mind lamp to this was like comparing a buyer to a seller or a fake to the real thing. The moment it appeared, it landed in the lamp wick at lightning speed. At the next moment, the light of the eternal heart lamp shone brightly. The shadow of the everlasting lotus became more solid. The lotus word on Fang Qingshan's palm also became more solid and mysterious. If that's the case, it should be fine. Seeing the changes in the eternal heart lamp, Fang Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. However, he still carefully tested it. Before the dust settled, he couldn't let go of the stone that was hanging in his heart. While Fang Qingshan was using the new Eternal Heart Lantern Mystic technique to continue investigating, the others were still diligently investigating. According to Bushu Jin, there were a lot of void stones here. They had been carefully selected by him, and there were many genuine ones. But in fact, most of them were just for show. If there were so many genuine products, there wouldn't be such a huge risk of losing 9 out of 10 gambles. If someone spent a lot of money to buy them, they would definitely lose even their underwear. Therefore, almost everyone was choosing carefully. They looked at this and touched that, but they just couldn't make up their minds. Of course, there were also people who didn't touch any void stone. Instead, they stood at a good spot and looked around. After a long while, they began to slowly search and choose. In fact, this was a true expert with experience. Those who used all kinds of secret techniques and then picked and knocked were actually amateurs or novices, planning before taking action. This was a true expert with experience. It didn't make a move, but when they made a move, they observed in advance and had a clear target. It could be said that Fang Qingshan and the others had clearly cast a net to catch fish from the start. Regardless of whether the fish were big or small, they would catch them first. On the other hand, these people who had been sitting on the fishing platform were different. They first selected their target and then continued to choose. Of course, although their methods were completely different, it was hard to say which one was more reliable. After all, whether it was Fang Qingshan's aimlessly casting a net or the other people's experience, they were just trying their luck. Chapter 1576. Luck. Why did cultivators attach so much importance to luck? Because although he was not fate, he had the same or even greater ability as fate, and fate was comparable to the dominating power of time and space, reincarnation, and cause and effect. With luck, when it was at its peak, cultivation would be smooth sailing. Even if one's aptitude was poor, such as Guijing's, heaven and earth would support him, and his path would be smooth sailing. Luck could not only assist in cultivation, but it could also bring good fortune to you. Others were sitting at home, but disasters came from the sky. But if you were sitting at home, treasures would come from the sky. Once you went out, all kinds of benefits would gather around you like rivers returning to the sea. At the same time, luck itself was a treasure. For example, the celestial chessboard in Fang Qingshan's hand. As long as he had enough luck, he could unleash infinite power. Just by relying on this spiritual treasure, he might be able to break the shackles of the celestial world. Other treasures like the people's umbrella, the list of Wei will, the picture of 10,000 Buddhas worshipping, and so on were all the same. Therefore, karma and karma were known as the two greatest treasures of all trades. However, compared to merit, luck was even better, because luck was divided into external luck and internal luck. External luck referred to others in heaven and earth, while internal luck belonged to oneself. External luck could be lost, for example. If one betrayed a sect or if a sect was destroyed, the luck blessed by the sect would be gone. But internal luck, as long as one continued to grow stronger, it would also increase. But merit was different. For example, the desolation of heaven and earth's merit had no effect in the infinite void or even in the pan-gu chaotic world. That being said, it was precisely because luck was so good that all cultivators valued him so much. And it was even more so in a place like stone gambling, which depended entirely on experience and luck. Because no matter whether they went to the void stones one by one or relied on their experience to find similar void stones that had once produced supreme treasures, what would happen in the end, and whether they would be able to obtain the real treasure still depended on their luck and fortune. If they were lucky, the Great Way would get closer to them, and when the time came, heaven and earth would work together with them, and perhaps they would be able to obtain the real treasure. If they were unlucky, then sorry, they might end up like that venerable emperor guest of the Jin clan, getting nothing. Just as Fang Qingshan and the others were immersed in the thrilling stone gambling, the transactions in other places were also in full swing. After all, this was a rare opportunity. With so many experts and potential talents gathered together, all kinds of rare treasures could be found everywhere. If it was in the past, it was likely that such a good trading venue could only be found in the ruins of the Eternal Heavenly Vessel or similar auction houses. As for the Eternal Level Timeless Ark's Ruin Market, it was a place exclusive to Emperor-level cultivators. Ordinary people weren't even qualified to enter, and even the weakest were title-peak divine emperors like Zhugajin and the others. Moreover, the trade fair here was a rare opportunity. So many people were willing to take out their precious treasures to trade. After all, the situation was mutual. Only when you took out a treasure that the other party couldn't refuse would the other party be able to take out a treasure that moved your heart. When a virtuous cycle was formed, all sorts of treasures were naturally everywhere. In particular, the items hanging on the photographic mirror in the center of the trade fair were even more covetous. If it was possible, everyone would probably want to sweep away all the good things they saw. However, this idea was forever just an idea, because no matter if they wanted to buy or rob, they couldn't do it. Unless you had the strength of a venerable emperor, you would only end up dead if you tried to rob. And if you had the strength of a venerable emperor, you wouldn't be interested in the things here. As for buying, it was a pity that they had limited void coins, so they couldn't squander them at will. They could only selectively choose the various treasures that suited them best. Not to mention them, even ordinary venerable emperors probably didn't have so much extra money. Moreover, when it came to buying things, money didn't necessarily mean that you could buy what you wanted. Some things were priceless, and some things didn't exist at all. In fact, most of the real treasures couldn't be bought with money. They had to be bartered, and you had to take out something that the other party wanted. Otherwise, even if you bought it at a premium, the other party wouldn't be willing to sell it. After all, this was a trade fair, not an auction. Of course, the trade fair had just begun. Ordinary heaven and earth treasures were fine, but these people rarely traded the really good things. It wasn't that they couldn't sell them, and it wasn't that no one wanted to buy them. It was just that the people who wanted to buy them wanted to compare the goods. For example, Fang Qingshan wanted to see if there were better or cheaper things. He wanted to maximize the profits with the lowest price. The people who wanted to sell were also very excited at the moment. They asked for sky-high prices, afraid that they would lose money. At the same time, they were also comparing the treasures that the people who wanted to buy them offered. After all, there were very few people who just wanted to sell things. Everyone wanted to get the things they wanted. Therefore, at this moment, people mainly just watched and didn't make any moves. Now, people were mainly collecting information and understanding the market. They wanted to see which top precious treasures, secret methods, and heaven and earth treasures were there. They wanted to know which ones they needed and which they would trade for at all costs, and which ones they wanted but could give up because the price was too high. Therefore, except for a small number of people, and except for the slightly ordinary things, the real precious treasures probably wouldn't have a high turnover. However, if they really found something that suited them, they would take it, even if they had to suffer a little loss. Yang Mei was one of those people who made the first move. Yes, at this moment, Yang Mei was also strolling around the trade fair. He and Fang Qingshan came to the boundless void together, and they could be considered fellow countrymen. In the past, Fang Qingshan still had to rely on him, but now he was far behind, whether it was in terms of cultivation or status. Speaking of which, this situation was very frustrating. To live in the same era as such a person, especially with a good relationship, and even a higher status than the other party, was both fortunate and unfortunate. There was no need to say much about the unfortunate. The fortunate thing was that as long as one's temperament was good enough, this was also a form of training. Although one step ahead, this didn't mean that one couldn't catch up. At the very least, compared to others, one's progress would be faster. Because of this, although Yang Mei didn't improve as quickly as Fang Qingshan, he had his own opportunities. Last time, he was also on the assassination list. Logically speaking, Yang Mei was very low-key. He was just an ordinary inner sect disciple, so it was a little strange that he was targeted. In fact, the real reason was that he was caught in the crossfire by Fang Qingshan. He had a good relationship with Fang Qingshan, and they had joined the Dao sect at the same time. Therefore, he was targeted because he had nothing to do. Chapter 1577. Dragons do not live with snakes, and immortals do not gather with humans. Since Yang Mei was with Fang Qingshan, it was obvious that he was not a simple person. Even if he did not show any special abilities or superb talents, it did not matter. As the saying went, it was better to kill 1,000 people than to let one person go. Regardless of whether he was talented or not, they would kill him first. After all, they were all from the Dao sect, and one less person would be one less person. Furthermore, it was more likely that he had yet to unleash his full potential. Or perhaps, he was just like Fang Qingshan before he unleashed his potential. He was still lying low, waiting for an opportunity to soar into the skies after 3 years of not flying, or to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, even if Yang Mei was really a mediocre person. Just the fact that he had a good relationship with Fang Qingshan was enough for people to deal with him. If they could defeat Fang Qingshan because of him, it would be a pleasant surprise. Even if there was no effect, there was no loss. It would just take a little more effort. Their approach was right, because Yang Mei was indeed a person with great potential. After all, he was the top existence in a newly opened chaotic world. Other than Pangu, almost no one could match his potential. As for Fang Qingshan, he was an exception. If he did not have the Heaven chessboard and the Timeless Arc, he would not be able to compete with Yang Mei. He would have already died of old age and reincarnated 100 times. Speaking of Yang Mei, he was indeed a person with great potential. If they killed Yang Mei, they would indeed eliminate the threat in the cradle. Unfortunately, even though they had such thoughts, they did not pay enough attention to him, because they had severely underestimated him. The people they sent were naturally slightly stronger than what he had revealed. Moreover, because of their arrogance, they took things lightly. Therefore, not only did Yang Mei come out unscathed, it was a blessing in disguise. After all, he was a golden belt for killing and arson. In addition, Yang Mei had also been to dangerous places such as the 10,000 Beast Mountain, the Een Corpse battlefield, and the Fallen Dragon secret territory, and obtained many opportunities. Of course, although he had some fortuitous encounters, he couldn't compare to Fang Qingshan and the others. At most, they were comparable to Qin Shuriwei and the others. Therefore, he was quite wealthy now. Only this bit of wealth was only relative to ordinary, undying beings. To Fang Qingshan, or even Jiang Shan and the others, it wasn't enough. Hence, he didn't wait. Instead, he wandered around in search of all sorts of top-notch spatial treasures. Once he found something he needed, he would act decisively. He knew his own net worth. Although he had some foundation, it was obviously impossible for him to buy some precious treasures with it, let alone spending it freely. Since he couldn't buy those precious treasures, it didn't make much of a difference whether he bought them now or later. As for the rest, apart from a few things that he needed to buy, they weren't too special. Although the price might be higher if he bought them now, he might be kicked out of the game later on because he was destined to be unable to compete with others with his wealth. He couldn't afford the other treasures, so there was no need for him to buy them. This was because he already had a precious treasure in his possession, the Chaos Bead. This was one of the 4 most powerful treasures that the Pangu Chaotic Realm had nurtured. As for the other 3 treasures, the Heaven-Splitting Axe, the Creation Green Lotus, and the Good Fortune Jade Plate, the first 2 had been completely shattered. Only the Good Fortune Jade Archive and the Chaos Bead remained. Although their grades had dropped, their origins were still intact. As long as he had enough powerful space-type treasures, he could repair this treasure bit by bit until it reached the peak of level 3, which was comparable to the 8-gem route E umbrella. After that, breaking through to level 4 would be no easy feat therefore. As long as Yang Mei saw a high-quality space-type treasure, he would buy it as long as it was suitable and affordable. This would continue until he ran out of money. Not only could these space-type treasures be used to repair the chaos bead, but they could also be used for cultivation. If he could repair the chaos bead completely, it would be enough for him to break through to the peak of the divine emperor realm. As for cultivation, although he was not like Mosquito Dowrin, who could improve continuously as long as he had enough resources, sufficient space-type treasures were enough to speed up his progress. There were many people like him. These people basically had some wealth, but they were at an average level. Therefore, he would not compete with others for treasures at the end. Instead, he would buy the goods in advance. As for Fang Qingshan, he was still a little nervous after he replaced the Eternal Lotus Seed. After all, he was not sure if it would be effective. If it was, how effective would it be? However, he did not show it on his face. He was still as serious as before, as if he was an expert. He stretched out his hand, and the lotus seal on his palm flashed. A ray of green light streaked across one of the void stones. In the next moment, Fang Qingshan's body trembled. This was because the moment his fingertips touched the void stone, he suddenly saw an unfamiliar space. It was as if he had scanned it with his primordial spirit. There was a feeling that there was no way out, but there was a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. It's done. Fang Qingshan was overjoyed. He knew that this was the interior of the void stone. Although it was still a little blurry, it was obvious that he had penetrated the interior of the void stone. However, this void stone was obviously fake because there was nothing inside. Good. However, Fang Qingshan did not care at all. At this moment, there was only boundless joy in his heart. The stone that was hanging in his throat was finally lifted. Next, he had to do his best to scan through all the void stones here and find the real one. Of course, finding the void stone was not the key. The key was to find a real treasure. That's right. Although there were good things in genuine void stones, anything that could be valued by the treasure puddle was not ordinary. However, the definition of good things depended on who it was used for. A peak level 3 treasure was naturally good in the eyes of Fang Qingshan and the others. However, in the eyes of experts like Battle Emperor Wushuang and Amateus Buddha, it was just so. Although the current Fang Qingshan had not reached that level, he was still a rank 2 treasure. However, Fang Qingshan wouldn't care if it was a genuine void stone that was wrapped in second-grade treasures or treasures of lower grades. After all, Jin Bushu was too greedy. A piece of void stone was equivalent to a middle rank 2 supreme treasure. If it was an ordinary rank 2 supreme treasure, even if it was a genuine one, it would be a loss. No one would be willing to do such a thing. Moreover, he could not buy too much. If he bought too much, regardless of the cost, his actions alone would be suspicious. After all, even a true expert in stone gambling and enthusiast would not buy too much at once. At the end of the day, stone gambling was a losing proposition. Anyone with a shred of rationality would not bet everything on one throw. Therefore, what Fang Qingshan needed to do was to keep improving and pick out the best. Chapter 1578. Although the Eternal Mind Lamp technique could help Fang Qingshan, he had to make a choice. Not only did he have to quickly scan all the void stones to see which ones were real and which ones were fake, but he also had to carefully pick out those that were at least peak second-grade treasures. At the same time, he couldn't pick too many or it would be too eye-catching. But at this moment, Fang Qingshan suddenly thought of a problem. What, there are too many good void stones? That's right. He wanted to carefully pick and not let anyone find out. But what if there were too many that he was interested in? One had to know why the Jin clan was famous as one of the 3 major stone gambling clans in Boundless Void. It was because it was easy to buy real void stones from them. This was the foundation of their survival. Didn't you see that when Fang Qingshan and the others were wavering, they opened 3 treasures? What did this mean? It meant that the quality of the stone gambling here was very high. Although it might be 1 in 100, it was considered a premium stock compared to other stone gambling halls. Should I give up? As soon as this thought popped up, Fong Qingshan threw it to the back of his head without hesitation. He would be a bastard if he didn't take advantage of the situation. He could obviously get a treasure, and it was a great treasure. Even if he had to bear the risk, no one would be willing to give it up. Especially for Fong Qingshan, who believed that even the smallest mosquito was meat. If it wasn't for the fact that Jin Bushu sold the stone gambling at the price of 1 mid-grade second-grade stone per stone, Fong Qingshan would probably go all out and take all the real ones even if he had to risk being exposed. Sigh. Fong Qingshan let out a sigh, feeling extremely conflicted. Should I give up, or should I not give up? For a moment, Fong Qingshan's mind was working frantically, and thousands of thoughts gushed out like a tidal wave. At a certain moment, he had a flash of inspiration. Got it. Fong Qingshan finally thought of a good idea that wouldn't attract too much attention. Of course, he had a good idea, but he still had to be fast. Firstly, he wasn't the only one choosing. Although he could see what was going on inside, and others couldn't, if someone was lucky enough to pick before him, it would be fine if it was an ordinary treasure. But if it was a great treasure, it would really make Fong Qingshan vomit blood. Moreover, the Eternal Heart lamp wasn't that easy to use, especially since the lamp wick was replaced with the Eternal Lotus Seed. It had already become the core of the Eternal Heavenly Vessel, the Eternal Lightning Pool, the Eternal Divine Furnace, etc. It could be said that it was the true core of the Eternal Heavenly Vessel. With it, the Eternal Heavenly Vessel would truly be the Eternal Heavenly Vessel. Without it, the Eternal Heavenly Vessel would be nothing more than a piece of trash. When he had refined it earlier, the Eternal Heavenly Vessel had been greatly affected. It was fine for a short period of time, but as time went on, there would be major problems. There were many of them, but they were in a hurry. Most importantly, they could not be too fast. For a moment, Fong Qingshan felt both pain and happiness. He felt pain because he had to be fast, but he couldn't be too fast. Too fast would attract attention, but he couldn't be too slow either. If he was too slow, he wouldn't be able to find everything and might even miss a good opportunity. As for happiness, it was naturally because each and every treasure was placed in front of him like an emperor's new clothes. However, he had to put on a show. Even if he was in a hurry, Fong Qingshan didn't just casually look at them. He touched each void stone, and from time to time, he would pick one up and carefully examine it. He didn't make a decision easily. Of course, his behavior wasn't strange at all. Almost everyone did the same thing. 9 out of 10 gambles lost, so everyone was very cautious. However, most of them were novices and didn't have much experience, so they were a bit hesitant. Black, really black. Profiteer, big profiteer. At this moment, Fong Qingshan was cursing Jin Bushu in his heart. Previously, it was because of his black-hearted pricing, but now, it was because of these void stones. Along the way, Fong Qingshan had touched no less than 100 void stones, but none of them were real. He had actually been hesitant before. What if there were too many real ones? What if there were too many good ones? What if he bought too many and caused people to suspect him? That was really thinking too much. Should he say that stone gambling was indeed a 9 out of 10 gambles lost? Or should he say that the Jin clan had good foresight? The iron basins were actually full of fake goods? This time, with so many people buying, Jin Bushu was probably going to make a lot of money. Could it be that the people who obtained the 3 treasures earlier were actors? Fong Qingshan couldn't help but think. However, this didn't matter to him. As long as it didn't matter to him, it was fine. Fong Qingshan calmed down. Seeing that some people were about to finish choosing, he couldn't help but speed up. Fong Qingshan directly skipped over the ones that were being looked at, but he memorized their positions and shapes. After looking through them once, he would come back to check if he missed anything. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. Fong Qingshan took advantage of the opportunity. While everyone else was immersed in observing, he quickly scanned the void stones one by one. At a certain moment, Fong Qingshan suddenly felt an indescribable green ocean. Murky's color was pure, without a single trace of impurities. It was so pure so intoxicating, instantly occupying the entire space of one's thoughts. At this moment, Fang Qingshan felt an unprecedented comfort, as though he was in the midst of a breakthrough, surrounded by all sorts of treasured lights and spirit chi. He knew that this should be a real void stone. Although he couldn't see clearly what the treasure inside the stone was, it was obvious that the grade of the treasure was not low. After all, Fang Qingshan had seen many real void stones along the way. However, the items inside these void stones gave Fang Qingshan a feeling that they were dispensable. There were only two reasons for this feeling. One was that these items weren't attractive to him, which was also known as fate. Fang Qingshan would never be able to obtain such items if he relied on luck. Fortunately, the treasures that were enveloped by the treasure's mud wouldn't conceal themselves. Otherwise, Fang Qingshan would probably be in a panic. Another possibility was that the grade of the treasure was not high and it wouldn't be of much use to him. Hence, it didn't give him a strong feeling of attraction. However, even though Fang Qingshan couldn't see what the treasure inside the void stone was, and he couldn't sense its grade, it gave Fang Qingshan an extremely comfortable feeling. In terms of aura, it wasn't inferior to the red lotus of fire, the bell of chaos, and other treasures in his hands. This was obviously a treasure of high grade. After all, treasures of too low a grade were not attractive to Fang Qingshan. Chapter 1579. Now for Fang Qingshan, treasures that were attractive to him had to be at least upper level 2 or even peak. That was because his cultivation had reached the peak of a mortal realm, and he could break through to the God Emperor realm at any time. If he wasn't waiting for the timeless arc to level up in the God Emperor chapter of the All Heavens Tao verification scripture, he would have broken through long ago. The standard for a God Emperor was a level 3 supreme treasure. After all, he was different from ordinary God Emperors. When he was at the immortal realm, he used a level 3 supreme treasure. Therefore, ordinary level 2 supreme treasures couldn't catch his eyes. Moreover, it was the same for the timeless arc Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree's doppelganger. Although the timeless arc's eternal divine furnace unit needed a rare treasure, which could lower the requirements, it was only relative to the red lotus of fire and the bell of chaos. Similarly, the grade of the item couldn't be lower. If it was too low, it would not only lower the grade, but it would also weaken one's foundation and potential. As for the cultivation of Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree, they had reached the late stage of a mortal realm, and even the peak. They also needed a higher grade supreme treasure. Ordinary supreme treasures were not useless, but the effect was not good. Of course, with Fang Qingshan's 1 meter higher sky nature, he wouldn't be so picky. As long as it was good, as long as it was valuable, and as long as he could get it, he would not let it go. However, the key was that he wasn't looking for secrets, but gambling on stones. He needed capital. An ordinary middle-level 2 supreme treasure was only worth the price of a void stone. If the void stone that he bought was not as valuable as the price of the void stone, wouldn't it be a loss? Therefore, even if the ordinary void stone was real, Fang Qingshan just looked at it and hadn't made a decision yet. But this one was different. Without hesitation, Fang Qingshan took the void stone and didn't put it down again. This wasn't just a casual look. This was the kind of fondness one would have when encountering something they fancied. However, this action of Fang Qingshan didn't attract anyone's attention. After all, he had already said that no one would believe that anyone could peep into the void stone. This was the result of countless years of experiments by countless venerable sovereigns. Even if Fang Qingshan told them himself, not only would these people not believe him, they would even think that he had lost his mind. Unless they waited for Fang Qingshan to reveal treasures one after another. Only then would these people be skeptical, and only then would they test him or even attack him directly. As for the Jadestone King in the mortal world, winning 9 out of 10 bets did not exist here. That was because even the best of the 3 great stone gambling clans, such as Jin Bushing's clan, could only barely maintain a small profit. There was simply no one who could casually open a treasure. If this was the case, the Jin clan wouldn't have needed any venerable sovereigns at all, because they could open Emperor Stones and level 4 supreme treasures. They had already become giants. They didn't need to rely on external forces. Of course, if this was the case, they probably wouldn't exist anymore. After all, an innocent man would get into trouble because of his wealth. If he could open a treasure at any time, and it was a treasure that was effective on peak divine emperors and even venerable sovereigns, then not to mention the Jin clan, even heavenly diabolism, holy Buddha, fairy spirit, and even number 1 supreme forces on the list of supreme forces wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Because if they monopolized a treasure, they would only end up being besieged by the whole heavens and realms. Before this, Fang Qingshan had done similar things several times, but he wasn't as excited as he was now. Moreover, he happened to find a void stone he fancied, so it was inevitable that he would be excited. After all, this was the stone gambling house, the most exciting place, just like the Colosseum. Moreover, the most common selection method in the stone gambling house was either luck or love at first sight. This was the so-called love at first sight. As soon as someone saw him, he was the only one they could get. In this case, it was very easy and there was a high chance that he would get a real treasure. Finally, because they had been choosing for a long time, most people had already decided on the void stone they wanted. Everyone picked it up, so it wouldn't be out of the ordinary. In fact, if Fang Qingshan casually took out a void stone without even inspecting it carefully and ended up with a precious treasure, it would be too eye-catching if it was just 1 or 2 treasures. But it would be fine if it was just 1 or 2 treasures, but it would only attract attention if there were too many of them. Putting all that aside, Fang Qingshan was almost unable to contain the excitement in his heart as he held the void stone in his hand. He had already picked out hundreds and thousands of void stones, but there wasn't even 1 in 100 of them that had real quality, or in other words, the genuine ones. Among these real treasures, the one in Fang Qingshan's hand was the best. He was sure that among all the void stones he had seen or touched, this one was definitely the most precious. This should be a level 3 treasure, and I'm afraid it's not just an elementary level 3 treasure. Fang Qingshan thought. The lotus seal in his hand flashed with a green light again. Fang Qingshan wanted to know more about the void stone's interior. Unfortunately, he was overthinking. Although he could sense the enormous energy contained in the void stone, he still didn't know the specifics. Forget it, I just need to know that this item is the real one and the most valuable one. Fang Qingshan didn't put down the void stone in his hand. After all, this void stone was different from the others. If he put it down and someone else got it, he would really cry. Fang Qingshan held the void stone and saw that someone had already walked out of the space in the iron basin. After thinking about it, Fang Qingshan didn't follow them out. While everyone wasn't paying attention to him, Fang Qingshan started to quickly sweep the void stones. After all, he wasn't someone who would be satisfied with just 1 treasure. He had made up his mind to sweep away all the good things in Invincible Jin's place. Other than the iron basin, there was also a silver basin and a gold basin. It was said that there were more genuine treasures there, so the probability of a great treasure appearing was higher. Unfortunately, the entry ticket was also more expensive. 1 ticket actually cost a peak level 2 or even level 3 treasure. Even Fang Qingshan couldn't afford such a price. Of course, if he could really get an unparalleled halberd, 1,000 Buddha-worshipping painting, or Emperor Stone, he wouldn't hesitate to go bankrupt. Speaking of which, there were actually quite a number of genuine void stones in the iron basin. Previously, there were 3. There was a low-grade but high-value treasure like the dragon and phoenix bringing prosperity tree. There was also a level 3 treasure like the destruction war flag. In addition, the one in Fang Qingshan's hand hadn't been opened yet, so he didn't know exactly what it was. In fact, this place was already considered good. As expected of the Jin family's casino, the rate of genuine items was very high. If it was somewhere else, it would be lucky to have 1 or 2, let alone a few. Chapter 1580. Through the eternal heart lamp technique and the mighty power of the everlasting lotus, Fang Qingshan saw through the laws of the infinite void and saw through the authenticity of the void stone. At this moment, he was unprecedentedly excited, especially after discovering a treasure. Even though he could not tell what it was or what grade it was definitely not any weaker than the dragon phoenix bringing auspicious tree and the flag of destruction that he had obtained earlier. Now, what Fang Qingshan needed to do was to speed up and scan through all the void stones and pick out all the genuine ones. In an instant, Fang Qingshan suddenly sped up and swept his palm across the void stone like a willow in the wind. He did not need to weigh it, make any sounds, or observe the details. He only needed to touch the void stone gently to tell whether it was genuine or not. As Fang Qingshan's palm brushed past, the lotus seal in his hand flickered faintly, like the flickering of a candle. Sometimes it would flash suddenly, reminding him that this was the real deal. If it shone brightly, it would seem to be urging him. This treasure was a treasure, and he must not miss it. Every time he encountered such a situation, Fang Qingshan's heartbeat would suddenly speed up, and he would be extremely excited. However, he still had to maintain his calm on the surface to prevent others from finding out. Even if no one believed that he could see inside the void stone, what if someone took it away after he put it down? After all, in order to not arouse suspicion, Fang Qingshan could only choose one now. As for the remaining void stones, he would need to open this one before he could do anything about it. Before that, if the other void stones that he had set his eyes on were taken by someone else, then he would really hate himself for being pressured by the golden thread year after year and working hard for someone else. He would even have the heart to kill himself. Speaking of which, it was completely wishful thinking for others to want to appraise all the void stones in the Iron Basin space in a short period of time. Not to mention whether they were right or wrong. Just based on their experience, it would not take a moment to determine whether a void stone was genuine or not. The most important thing was that there were many void stones here. There were more than 10,000 real and fake void stones here. On the other hand, Fang Qingshan could tell with a single touch. Putting everything else aside, just the efficiency alone was far superior to the others. As expected, Fang Qingshan, who had sped up, quickly finished appraising all the remaining void stones. Sure enough, gambling on stones was really a matter of losing 9 out of 10 times. There were tens of thousands of void stones, but there was less than 1 in 100 or even 1 in 1,000. The number of real void stones was less than 3 digits. Everyone knew that this would be the result, and Fang Qingshan had already expected it. But when the truth was placed in front of them, they couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Sure enough, this kind of gamble and probability event really depended on luck. However, the base number of void stones here was not small. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were carefully selected by Jin Bushu, the genius disciple of the Jin family, a professional stone gambling clan in Boundless Void. However, even so, apart from those that had been selected by others, there were only 50 void stones that had been appraised by Fang Qingshan. Although these 50 void stones were considered rare compared to the tens of thousands of void stones, this probability was already very good compared to other stone gambling dens. In other places, it was very possible that there might not be a single genuine void stone among the tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of them. Even if there were genuine void stones, it would be the same as finding genuine void stones. It would also depend on luck. Among the 50 genuine void stones that had been appraised by Fang Qingshan, apart from the one in Fang Qingshan's hand, the other 49 void stones were divided into 4 grades. The first grade, which was also the lowest grade, occupied the majority of the void stones. There were about 25 void stones, which made up half of the total. These void stones were all below level 2 medium grade. Those who had bought these void stones. He wasn't exactly lucky, but he wasn't exactly unlucky either. That was because they were lucky because they managed to buy the real thing by sheer luck. They were unlucky because they had also lost money. However, compared to buying fake void stones, they wouldn't suffer such a huge loss, and they could even recover some of their capital. As for the second tier of void stones, they were about the same price as the first tier. There were about 15 of them, and they were all medium grade too. Those who had bought these void stones were considered lucky. At least they wouldn't suffer a loss. Of course, this meant that they wouldn't be blinded by success and continue to buy. As for the third grade, it was really good because the value of the treasure was higher than the price of buying it. Although it was not too exaggerated compared to the loss of buying fake void stones. Buying the first grade would make one cry, and buying the second grade would not make a loss, but at least it could be regarded as a small profit or even a big profit. There were about 5 of them, and they were all at the level of the upper second grade, or even the peak second grade. As for the last type, there were 4 of them, including the one in Fong Qingshan's hand. There were a total of 5 of them. Whoever managed to get their hands on them would have struck gold. Being able to buy them was definitely a stroke of luck, just like the person who had obtained the dragon and phoenix, bringing auspicious tree and the destruction war flag. Because the void stones they had opened had surpassed level 2 and reached level 3. To find genuine void stones in the iron treasure bowl, and they were level 3 precious treasures. Wasn't that extremely lucky? Especially one of them. It was a precious treasure among precious treasures. It could be called the king of void stones in the entire iron treasure bowl. If it was someone with experience, they would see it as a completely ordinary void stone. Anyone with a bit of common sense wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't even look at it, let alone touch it. However, such a stone was not only a genuine void stone, but more importantly, the treasure contained within the stone was the one that Fong Qingshan had been holding in his hand all this time and couldn't bear to part with it. You can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't measure the sea with a pail. In fact, this void stone had been thrown here for a long time. Jean Boucher didn't know how many times he had exchanged goods and how many people had come to choose it, but no one had chosen it. Even Jean Boucher had probably forgotten about its existence. However, judging a book by its cover would cause one to lose their son. What they didn't know was that this ordinary-looking fellow was a true treasure. This could also be considered a different kind of concealment of a divine object. Now, it was Fong Qingshan who had gotten it for free. Fong Qingshan was very excited, but he didn't show it on his face. In order to not show his wealth and not attract too much attention, Fong Qingshan decided to give up on this void stone first. Chapter 1581. It was not that he did not want it, but he wanted to wait for Fong Qingshan to open the void stone in his hand before he picked it. This was Fong Qingshan's way of maximizing his profits, although there were 50 real void stones here. However, it was obvious that Fong Qingshan would not buy all of them. The 50 void stones were worth 50 medium-level, 2 supreme treasures. Although they might not be comparable to a pinnacle level, 2 supreme treasure, no one would be so crazy. However, the key point was that no one would be so crazy. Even if they wanted to stake everything on one throw, they wouldn't do it. Such a purchase would attract too much attention. Although one could take some risks for the sake of the supreme treasures, the risk was too great. One had to know when to give up and when to give up. Moreover, not all of the void stones among these 50 genuine items were worth the price of selling. At the very least, the value of the 25 supreme treasures was not even comparable to the purchase value. The 15 supreme treasures were also of no value to Fong Qingshan, who had an equivalent value to the purchase value. The former was a loss, while the latter was just a barter. As for the first-grade void stone that could produce upper level, 2, or even pinnacle level, 2 supreme treasures, Fong Qingshan gave it up after some thought. Although these void stones were valuable, Fong Qingshan did not only want to buy the void stones from the iron treasure bowls. Invincible Jean had 3 treasure bowls. Among the iron treasure bowls, it was said that the number of genuine void stones was the lowest. Therefore, Fong Qingshan decided to only pick the 5 void stones with the highest price. As for the ones that could make a small profit, he could only reluctantly part with them. As for the ones that were lower in value, he did not consider them at all. However, Fong Qingshan was prepared to take a look at the silver and gold basins. The silver and gold basins might not have as many good things as the iron basins. But what if? It was better to be safe than sorry. What if there were some precious treasures inside? After all, since Invincible Jin's family had divided the void stones into 3 types, iron, silver, and gold, they dared to charge a higher price, and no one objected to it for such a long time. Clearly, there was some truth to it. Since that was the case, Fong Qingshan naturally wouldn't miss it. Take precautions. Yes, although Fong Qingshan seemed to be very extravagant and heroic now, he was actually a very generous person. When he entered the trade fair, he took out 13 level 3 supreme treasures in one go, including a top-notch level 3 supreme treasure. This shocked the entire trade fair and even alarmed many peak divine emperors. This did not include the 3 better top-notch supreme treasures that he obtained from the Dao Isek secret vault. However, the truth was that Fang Qingshan was really poor. This kind of poverty was not reflected in the amount of money or resources, but in the lack of enough. If it wasn't for the fact that his trip to the Fallen Dragon's secret realm had been a blessing in disguise, and he hadn't just obtained the Last Day's Eye, the energy of the River of Annihilation, the wealth of the 3 commanders, Chong Lushui, Duan Wei, and the others, then he would still be busy working on the Timeless Ark's Divine Furnace unit. However, even though everything was ready and only lacking one thing, it was only enough to satisfy the needs of the Supreme Class Timeless Arkansas. What about the Immortal, Immemorial, and Eternal Ark? Therefore, Fang Qingshan should also prepare for the future advancement of the Timeless Arkansas. At the very least, he currently only had 3 top-notch level 3 supreme treasures in his possession when he reached the Immortal Realm. One of them was going to be used to fuse with the Timeless Ark itself. As for the Eternal Divine Furnace unit, given the foundation and speed of advancement of the Timeless Ark this time, the Everlasting Lotus would definitely not be stingy when it gave its blessings. He had 9 Eternal Divine Furnace units at the Ling Yun level, 3 at the Unparalleled level, 5 at the Supreme level, and 7 at the Supreme class. Given his current level, there would definitely be at least 5 Eternal Divine Furnace units. In other words, he was still lacking at least 3 top-notch level 3 supreme treasures. This was only at the Immortal Realm. The Immortal Realm was even worse, because at the Immortal Realm, he only needed top-notch level 3 supreme treasures. Although such treasures were considered precious, they could still be bought. He just needed to gather them together. At least in the Dao Will sect, if he really wanted to exchange or needed it, the sect would give him a certain amount of support and allow him to enter the Zhaixing Lu to choose or exchange for it. However, at the Immortal Realm and Eternal Realm, he needed level 4 supreme treasures. Even if the Dao Will sect wanted to support him, they would not be able to do so. It was impossible for them to give him the Dao Will list. Not to mention that he was just a disciple. Even if he became the sect master, he would not even think about it. Unless there was a slight chance that the Dao Will sect would face a life-and-death situation. If he could not get in the Dao Will sect, it was even more impossible for other places, such as trade fairs and auctions. Even the Timeless Ark, where venerable emperors interacted with each other, did not have it, but it was probably very rare. Moreover, treasures that could be fused into the Timeless Ark by Fang Qingshan, no matter what grade they were, at least had special functions and had to be of premium quality. As for other places, they probably did not even have ordinary level 4 supreme treasures, let alone premium quality ones. Fortunately, there was always a way out. In the past, Fang Qingshan had been worried about what to do, because in addition to auctioning and trading, he could only go exploring. In those top-level dangerous places, there might be the supreme treasures he wanted. However, even a venerable emperor could be killed in these places if they were not careful. Didn't the Dao Will sect's great ancestor die because of this? However, only with great risks would there be great gains. If he could really get it, he would have no other choice but to take a risk. Or, if he was lucky, he might find some venerable emperor's relic cave abode. However, the probability was very low, not as good as winning the lottery. Moreover, the most important thing was that Fang Qingshan did not need 1 or 2 level 4 supreme treasures. He needed at least 3 of them. Even if he went exploring and found the relic cave abode, it was impossible for him to find level 4 supreme treasures everywhere. Now, he did not need to try his luck and take risks, because the new skill he had just developed, stone gambling, had solved all of this perfectly. This was a profitable thing. Of course, this was only for Fang Qingshan. Moreover, compared to searching around aimlessly, there were many supreme treasures that could be obtained from stone gambling. Therefore, Fang Qingshan could not let go of any opportunity. After making up his mind, after everyone else had gone out, Fang Qingshan secretly noted down the locations of the other 4 supreme treasures so that he could collect them at lightning speed later. Otherwise, he was afraid that someone might really beat him to it. After all, if he got a supreme treasure, many people who were interested would probably immediately take action and try their luck, just like when they saw someone get the flag of destruction. Fang Qingshan was the last person to walk out with the stone of void in his hand. Chapter 1582. It seemed like a long time had passed since Fang Qingshan and the others entered the Iron Basin and came out. However, in reality, it did not take long. For one thing, when they were choosing the void stones, they were so focused that they seemed to have forgotten the passage of time. Of course, this was only for the people who were choosing the void stones. For another thing, these 3 treasure bowls did not only hide a mustard seed, but also change time and space. The flow of time was different from that of the outside world. Therefore, for the people outside, it did not take long for Fang Qingshan and the others to enter. After walking out of the treasure bowls, Fang Qingshan saw that no one continued to enter. Just like before, everyone was waiting to see if they could buy the real thing and what kind of treasure they would open. This was related to whether the feng shui and luck here were good. If it was good and there were real things and precious treasures like before, they would naturally be willing to buy them. These people would even swarm in like a swarm of bees. If it was not good, then sorry, no one would be willing to take the risk. These people would probably leave immediately. In the blink of an eye, this place would be deserted. In fact, this was also a psychological effect. It was just a custom of stone gambling. If it really depended on feng shui and luck, it depended on oneself. After all, no matter how good someone else's luck was, unless you had a close relationship with them, you might be able to benefit a little from it. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, his fowls and dogs also rise to heaven. Otherwise, you could only use evil methods to steal others' luck. Otherwise, even if everyone bought the real thing and opened a precious treasure, you would still not be able to buy it if your luck was not good. Apart from this, other than those who were watching and preparing to buy, those who had already made their choices were also indifferent. Everyone was waiting for someone to be the first to open the stone. It wasn't easy to break open the void stone. Although the treasure paste did not have any offensive or defensive effects, after it turned into a void stone, some unknown chemical reaction had taken place. Anyway, its hardness had increased by leaps and bounds, and it was as hard as some defensive precious treasures. In fact, this was normal. If it was not hard, how could it resist the prying of venerable sovereigns and all kinds of divine powers and secret methods? If it wasn't hard enough, it would shatter with just a pinch. Once it shattered, even if there was only a small crack, they would be able to find out what was going on inside without making a sound. If it was genuine, he would naturally buy it. If it was fake, he would naturally give it up. If that was the case, how could there be such a thing as losing 9 out of 10 gambles? Then again, there were 2 ways to break the void stone. The first was to use an attack, like a fire attribute divine ability. The process depended on the strength of your cultivation base. The more powerful the fire attribute divine ability, the faster it would break the stone, and vice versa. Of course, it could be soaked in water, struck by lightning, slashed by sabers, and so on. It all depended on which was more powerful and handy. Another way was to use a specialized stone cutting knife. Heaven and earth were balanced again. The void stone was so hard that even venerable sovereigns would need some time to break it with their magical powers and spiritual treasures. However, there was a kind of metal that was born to restrain the void stone. Its grade might not be high, and its quality might not be good, so the stone cutting knife it made was only at the level of an ordinary supreme treasure. However, it was unique in cutting the void stone. It was better than top-level spiritual treasures and venerable sovereigns. Using it to cut the void stone complemented each other. Seeing the crowd come out, Jin Bushu had already prepared the stone cutting knife for them. The crowd looked at each other. They wanted to go up, but they were a little nervous. Seeing this, Fang Qingshan rolled his eyes and was the first to go up. However, he was afraid that the others would open the treasure first and then stimulate the crowd that was eyeing him covetously. If they bought the void stone that he wanted, He would really want to cry, but have no tears. Since no one wants to be the first, I will start first. Let's see if I, a newbie, can have a good start. Fang Qingshan said with a smile. He took the stone-cutting knife from Jin Bushu's hand and started to cut the void stone quickly, as if he was very reckless. Although his movements were quick and continuous, and the gravel was cut off as if he was peeling off skin, the crowd's eyebrows were twitching, and there was a hint of nervousness in their eyes. Good heavens! Other people were extremely cautious when they opened the stone. If there was a treasure inside and it was cut by him, even if it was not hurt at all, it would still hurt for 3 seconds. Therefore, Fang Qingshan looked like a newbie. However, they did not know that Fang Qingshan was very confident. After all, he could see clearly what was going on inside, so he did not hesitate to make a move. Moreover, he wanted everyone to think that he was a newbie, so even if he got a supreme treasure, they would not doubt him. Fang Qingshan moved very fast, and the void stone was not big, so he cut it off quickly. Buzz! In the next moment, an aura that seemed to be the power of creation and the power of the origin tree spread out. In any case, whether it was the power of creation or the power of the origin tree, it was full of vitality, which made everyone's body and mind tremble. All the pores on their bodies opened, and they felt very comfortable. Their nervousness, fatigue, and even some minor injuries were all gone. They could even feel the endless essence of the great path flowing in their hearts, and the laws of the great path appeared in front of them, extremely clear. A great treasure! At this moment, everyone immediately realized that Fang Qingshan had bought the real thing, and it was a great treasure. In a flash, they all looked at the void stone in Fang Qingshan's hand. Their eyes were full of passion, like hungry wolves pouncing on their prey. Those who did not know what was going on thought that they were going to rush over and snatch it in the next moment. Then a vision bloomed, a brilliance that was more brilliant than a rainbow shone. Upon closer inspection, it was a piece of spiritual soil. However, this spiritual soil was different from other earth attribute soil. It actually had 12 colors. 12-colored spiritual soil. It could be said to be the top spiritual soil in the infinite void in the universe and the supreme of the earth. Earth attribute heaven and earth treasures were usually earthy yellow, but there was a type of soil that was gorgeous. Among them, the most common was the 5-colored soil, which was also known as the living soil. The 5-colored stone, which was also known as the heaven-repairing stone, was similar to him. They were the top earth attribute heaven and earth treasures below the first-grade supreme treasure. The 7-colored soil was a level higher than the living soil. It was fertile soil for cultivating chaotic spiritual roots. Yang Mei's body, the hollow willow tree, had grown on the 7-colored soil. As for the 3rd-grade spiritual roots, such as the lotus of bliss that Fang Qingshan had obtained, to grow, it needed the 9-colored soil. To nurture a 4th-grade spiritual root, it had to have 12 colors. Chapter 1583. Of course, not all spiritual roots grew from a soil. Some water-type spiritual roots only needed spiritual water that was comparable to 12-colored soil. However, earthborn spiritual roots needed 12-colored soil to grow to the 4th level. Although 12-colored soil didn't mean that there would be a 4th-level spiritual root, the probability was still very high. For a moment, everyone's breathing became heavy. Even Jin Buliu's eyes widened. He naturally didn't care about ordinary treasures. In fact, the more the better. However, if he opened a level 4 treasure, even though it would allow him to make a huge profit and fill his coffers, he would still feel like he was drinking the soup while others ate the meat. After the phenomenon manifested the 12-colored spirit soil, a seed fell from the sky. Then, a seed descended from the sky and landed on the spiritual land. It was a dark green seed, somewhat similar to the eternal lotus seed. Of course, its grade was not comparable, but it still gave people a feeling of vitality. When the seed took root in the spiritual soil, it sprouted at lightning speed. In a flash, it had grown into a small sapling. Then, not long after, it grew into a towering tree. Of course, This wasn't because the 12-colored spirit soil was good, nor was it because the seed was like the dragon phoenix bringing prosperity tree. It was just a phenomenon, just like pressing the fast-forward button while watching a video. Then again, from the moment the seed sprouted to the moment it grew into a towering tree, its aura grew stronger day by day. In the beginning, it wasn't even a level 1 spiritual root. In everyone's eyes, it was just an ant. However, as the tree continued to evolve and grow day by day, its aura continued to rise. Level 1 spirit root, level 2 spirit root, level 3 spirit root. In a trance, everyone felt an invisible pressure that was increasing by the day. At some point, the aura reached its peak and couldn't advance any further. It was as powerful as a mountain, as vast as the sea, as mighty as a prison. Everyone almost couldn't breathe under the pressure. Those who knew that they were facing a tree or a shadow, but those who didn't might think that they were facing Zhugajin or Daoisti. Peak level 3 spiritual root. In terms of grade, it was similar to the 8 treasures wishful scepter. Invulnerable fruit tree. Someone recognized the origin of this spiritual root. The so-called invulnerable fruit tree referred to the defensive power of the spiritual root itself. Almost nothing of the same level could hurt it. Furthermore, the fruits he bore were top-notch healing treasures. Consuming them would allow one to revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. Even Dao injuries and foundation injuries could be healed with incredible power. Originally, everyone thought that everything was over. The treasure inside the Void Stone was a peak rank 3 spiritual root invulnerable fruit tree. However, they guessed wrong. The phenomenon did not end. Rumble. After the innocuous fruit tree's aura reached its peak, it paused for a while. Suddenly, it went berserk, unknowingly when an even more terrifying aura swept down. It was a supreme power that carried the power of supreme judgment. The crowd was no stranger to this, because they would encounter it whenever they faced a heavenly tribulation. It was the supreme will of the great way of heaven and earth. It was cold and had no intelligence, only instinct. It had existed since ancient times and was immortal. If there was another existence in the boundless void that had truly surpassed venerable emperors and was a level 4 existence, then there was no doubt that would be the boundless void, the great way of heaven and earth's origin, the will of heaven and earth. It was mentioned before that some peak venerable emperors had been stuck at the peak level of level 4 for too long and were unable to break through. Therefore, they had tried all kinds of methods. Some people wanted to go against the flow of the river of time and space to trace back to the origin. Some people shuttled back and forth among the emperor-level danger zones in the boundless void, trying to find a way. After all, since it was an emperor-level danger zone, it was obviously very dangerous for venerable emperors. Since there was danger, there might be hope for them to break through. There were also people who tried to destroy the world. As the saying went, there can be no construction without destruction. Of course, it could also be because they had been unable to break through for too long and their hearts had become gloomy. They were like people on the verge of death who wanted to go crazy for one last time. There were also people who set their sights on the origin will of heaven and earth. They wanted to merge their bodies with the way like Hongjun. One of the 3 peak level 3 supreme treasures that Feng Qingshan had obtained from the Dao Isek secret vault, the amplification law, was actually somewhat similar. This item had been cut down from the great way of heaven and earth by a peak venerable emperor who had realized that he couldn't successfully merge with the way. However, it was a pity that the will of heaven could not be deceived. In the end, although the law had been cut down, the peak venerable emperor had also died. Speaking of which, the scene before them was actually very simple. This tree's cultivation had been unable to make any further progress, so it had attracted the origin will of heaven and earth. It wanted to borrow the power of the great way of heaven and earth to temper itself and transform. Immediately, a storm was brewing. Dark clouds loomed over the city. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Endless thunderbolts came from the depths of the source space and struck down. Feng Qingshan had experienced the mutated immortal thunder tribulation. Even many divine emperors would be aghast at the sight of it. However, at this moment, when he saw this spiritual root undergoing the sovereign tribulation, he found that there was indeed a mountain beyond the mountain and a tower beyond the building. There was always someone stronger than the strong. Compared to this sovereign tribulation, his own immortal tribulation was simply indescribable. This kind of aura, this kind of intensity, Fang Qingshan had only felt from the Sword Emperor of the Storm, the ancestor of the Tao East sect, the Phantom of the Emperor Beheading Saber, the Phantom of the Fist Emperor, the Tao Will List, and the Gatekeeper of the Jiaxing Tower. It belonged to the Emperor level, a level 4 level. The cultivation displayed by the innocuous fruit tree was not any weaker than a half-step venerable emperor like Taoist Yi. However, under the attack of these thunderbolts, it had no power to fight back. Lightning like this appeared to be the color of primal chaos. It did not begin and did not end. It existed eternally. Once it struck down, all evils would be exterminated. Ghosts and devils would be exterminated. Even a true venerable emperor would have a hard time facing such thunderbolts, let alone a half-step venerable emperor who had yet to break through. An ordinary peak divine emperor would be turned to dust in less than an hour under such thunderbolts. Fortunately, this was the innocuous fruit tree. After all, its defensive power was so strong that it was invincible at the same level. Invulnerable, invulnerable, and invulnerable. In addition, the fruits it bore could revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. Its own recovery power was obviously even more amazing. However, even with such a strong defensive power and amazing recovery power, the innocuous fruit tree was on the verge of collapse under the attack of the sovereign tribulation. Of course, it might also be because of its extraordinary talent, so the tribulation power it attracted was stronger. Just like how Yang Mei's immortal tribulation was a high-level thunder tribulation, Fang Qingshan's immortal tribulation was a top-level 6-9 path tribulation. Chapter 1584. Everything was because of Xiao He, and everything was because of Xiao He. Because of his talent, the Wushang fruit tree had been able to reach where he was today. He had an emperor-grade aptitude, and had even triggered a sovereign tribulation. Once he broke through, there would probably be another top-notch venerable emperor in all the realms. Unfortunately, because of its talent, it had attracted the jealousy of heaven. Therefore, there were many tribulations, and its power was boundless. Especially the spiritual root, the sacred beast would have an even greater power. Venerable Sovereign, level 4, was already considered the top of the pyramid in the infinite void and all realms of the universe. Only the great way of the origin of the universe could be half a step away from level 5, or it could be level 5. But apart from that, breaking through to Venerable Emperor was equivalent to reaching the peak of one's life, because no Venerable Emperor had been able to break through to Venerable Emperor for so many years. Apart from that, if one wanted to wear the crown, he must bear its weight. If one wanted to get more, he must pay more. If one wanted to break through to this realm and comprehend the emperor-level rules, he must bear the test of the origin of the heavens and earth. If he passed, he would naturally achieve great success. If he failed, he would return to the heavens and earth. Its power was unimaginable. It's terrifying. Fang Qingshan stared at the boundless thunderbolts as his heart shuddered. He was completely unable to summon any strength to resist. It was hard for him to describe what kind of power this contained. Even if he were to give it his all, a single strike would be enough to turn him into ashes. In fact, if he were to truly face such a calamity, not to mention resisting, it would be extremely difficult for him to even move. But then again, although the innocuous fruit tree was powerful, it still lacked a little bit of luck and maturity. It failed at the last step and didn't pass the Emperor Tribulation. The thunderbolt struck down, and it was not something he could resist, even though he had a lot of resources and methods, and he kept splitting and disintegrating the thunderbolt's power. The remaining thunderbolt power was still extremely terrifying. However, the remaining power of lightning was still terrifying to the extreme. Although it wasn't able to destroy everything like before, the remaining power of lightning struck his body without a doubt. The damage to his spirit root, was too horrible to look at. The powerful force even caused the surface of his spirit root to flicker with dazzling black lightning. It was a ghastly sight, and the sound of collision resounded through the sky. Even though his recovery power was amazing, and his spiritual root was being destroyed and repaired at the same time, the speed of repair was not as fast as the speed of destruction. 1 thunderbolt, 2 thunderbolts, 3 thunderbolts, 1 minute, 2 minutes, a quarter. Although the spirit root had given its all, it was a pity that it was still lacking a move. Under the attack of the lightning, the branches and leaves fell, the backbone cracked, the roots snapped, the primordial spirit collapsed, and the true spirit perished. In the end, his billions of years of bitter cultivation dissipated in an instant, and all his efforts were for naught. At the very last moment, it seemed to know that its fate had been decided. The innocuous fruit tree didn't go crazy. Instead, it maintained its rationality and split itself into two. He fused all of his origin energy, as well as the memories of his true spirit and Yuan divinity, into one of the seeds. Then his other true spirit and laws self-detonated. The reason why he did this was because he wanted a chance of survival. Even if he were to make a comeback, he would only have his memories and would no longer be himself. But at least he still had a chance. For a time, everyone's heart skipped a beat. They had almost witnessed the entire process of a spiritual root growing from a seed to the peak of level 3, half a step away from level 4, and finally overcoming the sovereign tribulation. Although it was just a flash, it was still dazzling. At the same time, he felt dejected. As the saying went, when the rabbit dies, the fox grieves. Although most of them hadn't reached the peak of God Emperor yet, with their talents, they could at least reach the peak of God Emperor, even if they couldn't reach the sovereign realm. However, no one knew how many people had been stopped from advancing from the peak of the divine Emperor realm to the venerable sovereign realm since ancient times. Many people had been stuck at this step and couldn't make any progress. Many people had tried their best, but ended up dying under the thunder tribulation. For a time, everyone seemed to have a lot on their minds. It took them a long time to come back to their senses. As soon as they came back to their senses, they all fixed their eyes on the seed that the innocuous fruit tree had left behind. Although the innocuous fruit tree had failed to overcome the heavenly tribulation, leaving only a seed. Although it wasn't as good as a half step away from level 4 spiritual root, it was still a precious treasure. This seed was similar to the Emperor's Stone. The only difference was that the Emperor's Stone was a treasure left after the death of a real sovereign, while this seed was a half step away from sovereign realm. Correspondingly, the effect was similar. The Emperor's Stone could help people break through to the sovereign realm, so this seed could be used as a reference. Although it wasn't strong, because the innocuous fruit tree had failed, it was still enough to make people scramble for it. Didn't he see that everyone's eyes were burning with desire? Their eyes were as bright as the sun and the moon. Main body, I need this item. Not only were the others excited, but the clone of the world tree almost jumped out. Compared to the others, the clone of the world tree, who also had a spiritual root, coveted it even more. With this seed, as long as the clone of the world tree refined it, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through to the God Emperor realm. Not only would he break through to the God Emperor realm, but he would also become a God Emperor in the future. After all, even though it was just a seed, it had been left behind by a half-step Emperor grade rank for spirit root. Furthermore, in the end, in order to make a comeback, he cut off his wrist and sacrificed his true spirit to preserve all of his source energy in this seed. Therefore, getting this seed was equivalent to getting all of the innocuous fruit tree. Not only did it have the source energy of the innocuous fruit tree, but it also had the experience from when he was weak to when he broke through to the sovereign realm. Naturally, it was smooth sailing before he broke through to the sovereign realm. Even when he broke through to the sovereign realm, it would be strengthened. After all, the feeling of going through the heavenly tribulation had been deeply imprinted on the seed. Good. Although it wasn't the eternal divine furnace unit that he urgently needed, Fang Qingshan was very happy that it could be so useful to the clone of the world tree. After all, there were only 2 reasons why he refined the clone. One was to leave a backup plan in case he had a chance to make a comeback in case something unexpected happened. The other was to ask the clone to help him. Of course, Fang Qingshan's goal was the latter. However, the progress of his original body was too fast. Mosquito Dowren was fine. After all, as long as he had resources, he could continue to improve. The clone of the World Tree, as a top-level spiritual root, was fine in the past, but as the original body continued to improve, it gradually couldn't keep up. If it hadn't absorbed a lot of destructive source energy in the Fallen Dragon's secret realm last time, it probably wouldn't have been able to keep up. Chapter 1585. In fact, the World Tree was quite talented. At the very least, it was not inferior to Yang, Mei's hollow willow tree body. However, compared to Fang Qingshan and Mosquito Dowren, both of them were nothing. There would be no harm without comparison. Mosquito Dowren was a grand mist species with extraordinary talent. As long as he had enough resources, he could break through continuously. Although Fang Qingshan didn't have an advantage like Mosquito Dowren, he had the timeless Arkansas. Every time the timeless arc broke through, it would receive an eternal blessing. Not only could it be used to improve one's cultivation base, but it could also be used to break through bottlenecks and restore one's essence. Therefore, Fang Qingshan's progress in cultivation was not inferior to Mosquito Dowren's. Therefore, compared to his main body and Mosquito Dowren, the World Tree clone's upgrade speed was much slower. Last time, he had absorbed the essence of destruction and his cultivation base had risen. While it was still passable, it seemed to have caught up to him. But the problem was that Fang Qingshan was about to make a breakthrough again, and this breakthrough would be different from the past. He was a divine emperor, and no divine emperor could compete with him except for Venerable Sovereign. This time, the gap between the God Emperor and the Undying Realm was not that easy to break through. Jiang Bawang, Eve Daoxian, and the others were so talented. If not for the heaven and earth helping them, who knew how long it would take for them to break through? In the end, it was because the World Tree clone was not Mosquito Dowren. As long as he had resources, there would be no bottleneck. Now that he had this innocuous fruit tree seed and the origin power and experience of the innocuous fruit tree, the World Tree clone would be able to advance by leaps and bounds. There were two ways for the World Tree clone to improve. One was to walk the World Tao and break through 3,000 laws at the same time. However, this path was too slow and difficult. The other method was to walk on the wood origin path. By absorbing the origin of the innocuous fruit tree, the wood origin would definitely be able to make a breakthrough, and from there it would be able to nurture the World Tao. In this case, it might be possible for him to break through to Venerable Sovereign Realm together with me. Taoist, I wonder if you can sell this seed to me. At this moment, a person who seemed to have an aura similar to the World Tree's clone walked over. Obviously, this person was also someone who had obtained the Tao with spiritual roots. He looked very excited. I'm willing to offer a mid-grade LV3 treasure. He, middle rank 3? You dare to take out a mere mid-rank 3? As soon as he finished speaking, before Fang Qingshan could reply, someone immediately refuted. This is a seed left behind by a half-step level 4 spiritual root, and it's a seed that has survived the sovereign tribulation. How can a level 3 supreme treasure compare to it? I'll bet a high-grade rank 3 treasure. Although this person didn't have a spiritual root, judging from his aura, he was a cultivator of the Azura wood laws. The benefits of the Wushang fruit tree's seeds were self-evident. I'll offer 2. I offer 2 upper LV 3 supreme treasures and 5 middle LV 3 supreme treasures. At this moment, a young man who looked even more excited walked over. He first bowed to Fang Qingshan, then said, I'm Long Xiao, a disciple of the Templar Hall. I'm Long Xiao, a disciple of the Saint Hall. Greetings, fellow Fang. My patriarch is injured and urgently needs this item to heal. I hope that you can part with it on account of the good relationship between the Saint Hall and the Tao Will sect. As soon as these people saw something good, they were like hungry wolves that smell blood. They swarmed over like bees. Although they knew that the possibility of a transaction was not high, they still tried their best to bid. 8 immortals crossing the sea showed their magical powers. Some lured people with benefits, and some played the emotional card. No matter what, they had to bid first. What if there was a mishap? What if Fang Qingshan took action? Unfortunately, this did not happen. Fang Qingshan didn't have the mood to chat with them. Moreover, this item was related to the cultivation of the World Tree's clone, so he couldn't sell it. Moreover, an ordinary upper LV3 Supreme Treasure was nothing to him. After all, Fang Qingshan didn't even keep the peak LV3 Devil Vanquishing Sword with him. It was just that right now, he was still thinking about the other 4 top-grade Void Stones in the Iron Treasure Basin. He was afraid that others would come out with Supreme Treasures because of him, and these people wanted to get lucky and rush in to steal his harvest. Hence, he quickly waved his hand to interrupt them. Everyone, you should know that I was seriously injured some time ago and almost hurt my origin. I also need such a treasure to heal, so there's no need for a transaction. Hearing this, everyone's expression darkened, especially the disciple from the Templar Hall. However, they also knew that what Fang Qingshan said was the truth. After all, the Dowell sect had made such a big move not long ago. It was impossible for them not to know about it. After all, the formation of the meeting this time was also closely related to it. Fang Qingshan paused and said, "You don't have to stare at me. You should know that there are still many Taoist Jin behind me. Who knows, they might get even better ones." Taoist Jin Bushu is indeed the successor of the Jin family of stone gambling. Indeed, seeing is believing. He has already gotten the dragon and phoenix bringing glory tree and the destructive war flag. Coupled with the seed in my hand, the chances of getting a genuine item and a supreme treasure are really too high. I won't say much to everyone. Since I'm still lucky, I'll go and pick a few more. Previously, I had my eyes on a few. Who knows? They might also be supreme treasures. As he spoke, Fang Qingshan turned around and entered the Iron Treasure Basin again. With lightning speed, he picked up the other void stones that he had his eyes on earlier. However, Fang Qingshan's actions first made everyone feel regretful. Then, they came to a sudden realization. Yes, first it was the Divine Ability Seal, then the Dragon and Phoenix Spiritual Root, then the Destructive Spiritual Treasure, and now the innocuous Fruit Seed. The chances of getting a genuine item and a supreme treasure were so high here. Instead of wasting time here, it would be better to buy one. Who knows, he might even get a supreme treasure. Then, these people followed Fang Qingshan in like a tide. Jin Bushu was grinning from ear to ear. His entire body was trembling. In fact, this was a method that Fang Qingshan had thought of to not attract too much attention. He used the excuse of getting a supreme treasure as an excuse to buy the void stones that he had his eyes on for a long time. After getting all the void stones, this time, Fang Qingshan didn't open any more. Firstly, there were more people opening the void stone at this moment, and they were advancing wave after wave. Secondly, the void stones in his hand were all level 3 treasures. Especially one of them, it was even better than the one in his hand. If he opened it, things would be bad. If he opened one, it could be said that he was lucky. If he opened 2, it would be very eye-catching. If he opened all the void stones he bought, it would be really sensational. Even though everyone still didn't believe that someone could spy on the inside of the void stones. If it happened once, it might be luck. If it happened twice, it might be a coincidence. But if it happened 3 to 5 times, no matter what, there must be a problem. Chapter 1586. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. It could be done once, twice, but not thrice. Especially when it came to stone gambling. Even if one's luck was monstrous, it was impossible to buy the real thing every time. It was fine to buy the real thing, but if it was all treasures, then it would be even more difficult to explain. Don't think of others as fools. Even if they didn't see you personally open the treasure from the void stone, it was still a treasure. However, since they were precious treasures, 1 or 2 might not be a big deal. They might have been obtained from a historical remnant, refined by one, or bestowed by a sect. However, once there were too many, and you couldn't explain the origin, then it would attract attention. As long as there was a trace of doubt in others' hearts, then it wouldn't be far from being exposed. At that time, not to mention other things, just watching you in secret before being sure was enough to make Fang Qingshan uncomfortable. As the saying went, it was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to guard against a hidden arrow. If one wanted to open a treasure, it was impossible to not go to the stone gambling house. Even if one saw a treasure, even if one carefully selected it, it was impossible to give up all of them, just like this time. Even if Fang Qingshan could use clones and incarnations to confuse the eyes and ears, it was fine once or twice, but he might not be able to escape the eyes of others, especially those who knew the art of calculation. It was even more terrifying. They could use the slightest trace to link back and forth, probing the true relationship between the two. At that time, everything would be revealed. Therefore, before he really grew up, he must be careful, and more careful. After all, he still wanted to rely on stone gambling to collect all the units of the timeless arc and the divine furnace in the future. Apart from this method, if he wanted to find opportunities through secret seeking, he was afraid that even if he had millions of years, or even hundreds of millions of years, he might not be able to collect all the treasures needed for the timeless arc to advance to the 5th level. It wasn't that he couldn't lower the standard, but the consequence of lowering the standard was that the standard of the timeless arc would be completely lowered, and the foundation would be trapped in this stage forever. In the infinite void, among the heavens and the myriad worlds, there were many eternal level timeless arc, and the everlasting lotus was also everlasting. But why couldn't these people break through? Why were they always stuck in the same realm and unable to advance? Was it because after reaching the eternal level, the everlasting lotus no longer blessed the timeless arc? The answer was no. The real reason was because they had lowered their requirements for the sake of making breakthroughs faster. In the end, they had been unable to attract the attention of the eternal mother of the Divine Mother. Therefore, even though it was difficult to integrate a 4th-level treasure, Fang Qingshan didn't want to give up and settle for the next best. Not compromising might be difficult, but at least there was still hope. If they gave up, they might be able to advance by leaps and bounds in a short period of time, but they would lose their future. Stone gambling was his only chance, and naturally, he wouldn't let it go. However, if he was being watched by someone and his every move was under someone else's watch, then he would really be finished. If he didn't gamble on stones, he wouldn't have any supreme treasures, and the advancement of the timeless arc might come to an abrupt end. If he gambled on stones, the risk would be too high. Once someone confirmed that he had a secret method to open the void stone, not only would the Dao school not be able to protect him, but the Dao school might also be a part of the Dao school. After all, money could move people's hearts, and people's hearts were the most fragile thing, especially when it came to level 4 supreme treasures or advancing to Emperor Venerable Realm. Even a master, a disciple, a father, a son, or a wife would do anything for the Great Way, let alone a sect. Speaking of which, this time, Fang Qingshan did not have to worry too much. After all, this was his first time gambling on stones, and he got the seed of the Wushang fruit tree. Everyone was envious of his good luck. As for buying a few more void stones, no one cared about it. After all, didn't everyone see how many people flocked here just because of the treasure? Since others wanted to take advantage of his good luck, why couldn't he take advantage of it and continue to buy more? As long as he didn't buy dozens of void stones at once, or open a few supreme treasures in public, no one would say anything or suspect him. Therefore, after buying the 5 void stones, Fang Qingshan left invincible gold. Again, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Of course, this was not because he wanted to give up the other stones in the gold and silver treasure basin, but because he wanted to change his identity. Previously, he had bought 4 void stones in one go by opening the seed of the Wushang fruit tree. If he went into the gold and silver treasure basin to buy more, it would attract too much attention. Most importantly, it was not a big deal to buy a few more iron treasure basins. After all, one iron treasure basin was only a medium level 2 supreme treasure. Although it was expensive for others, it was still within Fang Qingshan's budget. However, in the silver treasure cornucopia, The price of a gambling stone was a peak rank 2 supreme treasure, not to mention an early rank 3 supreme treasure for the gold treasure cornucopia. Even a landlord wouldn't have that much food to spare. Therefore, there were very few people who came here by. If someone came and bought a lot at once, it would be hard not to attract attention. Therefore, after Fong Qingshan bought all the stones in the iron treasure basin, he turned around and left without hesitation. However, not long after, 2 strangers arrived in front of Invincible Gold's stall. One of them was Mosquito Dowrin, and the other was the World Tree clone. Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree clone shared weal and woe with Fong Qingshan. Whatever they knew, Fong Qingshan knew, and whatever Fong Qingshan knew, they knew as well. Therefore, they could also use the Eternal Heart Lamp technique. However, there was only one Eternal Lotus Seed. Therefore, Fong Qingshan let Mosquito Dowrin choose from the Silver Treasure Basin first. He also gave him the Timeless Arkansas. As for the World Tree clone, he went to the Gold Treasure Basin to choose for himself. Although there was no Eternal Lotus Seed, and the Eternal Heart Lamp couldn't be seen too clearly, he could eliminate some first to save time. The reason why he let Mosquito Dowrin go to the Silver Treasure Basin first was that although the Gold Treasure Basin had a higher chance of producing genuine items and supreme treasures, it was too expensive. Even with Fong Qingshan's wealth, he couldn't afford it. If it wasn't a genuine treasure, he wouldn't buy it at all. On the other hand, true precious treasures had to be at the high rank of the 3rd rank at the very least, or even the peak of the 3rd rank. Of course, treasures like the Last Days are fine as well. As for a level 4 supreme treasure, Fong Qingshan did not have any extravagant hopes, although it was easy to get level 4 treasures in stone gambling. However, Jin Bushu was just a disciple who hadn't even reached the God Emperor level, so his supply was limited. The possibility of obtaining a level 4 supreme treasure or even a peak level 3 supreme treasure from him was not high. Putting that aside, after Fong Qingshan left Invincible Jin's stall, he once again wandered around the trade fair. Chapter 1587. Logically speaking, Fong Qingshan had already developed the magical skill of stone gambling, so he wouldn't have to worry about supreme treasures in the future. Therefore, ordinary transactions wouldn't be of much use anymore. Although the quality of this trade fair was good, it was only relative. Didn't they see that Fong Qingshan had only taken out a demon-suppressing sword, and the entire trade fair was shaken? If Fong Qingshan couldn't obtain any supreme treasures from the Void Stone, then so be it. However, since he could obtain supreme treasures from the Void Stone, a trade fair of this level wouldn't be of much use to him. After all, they wouldn't be able to take out any supreme treasures. However, there was a reason why Fong Qingshan didn't give up. First of all, he needed treasures with special functions, not ordinary supreme treasures. For example, although the hibernation bead wasn't bad, it wasn't something that couldn't be traded for those who valued defense and attack. Another point was that although the Void Stone could contain supreme treasures, it still depended on luck. After all, he could distinguish the genuine items and see the internal condition of the Void Stone. However, the premise was that there must be genuine items. Even if there were genuine items, there was no guarantee that the genuine items would be peak level 3 or even level 4 supreme treasures. Although the items wrapped in the Void Stone weren't ordinary, low-grade treasures with no special effects weren't of much use to him. Therefore, Fong Qingshan had to look around to see if there were any treasures that he needed. He wouldn't let go of any opportunity. After all, what if? It was better to be safe than sorry. What if there was something good? Grasping with both hands, working on both at the same time. Walking on 2 legs was better than walking on 1 leg. Moreover, the 13 supreme treasures had already been put up. If he suddenly said that he didn't want to trade, he might offend those who heard the news. Some of them weren't even peak God Emperors. Although Fong Qingshan wasn't afraid of them, it was better to avoid trouble. It would be good to have one less enemy. Besides, if they could trade for something suitable, then it would naturally be a win-win situation. Even if they couldn't, it wouldn't take much effort and there wouldn't be any losses. After going around in circles, Fong Qingshan had seen everything he needed to see, especially the center of the trade fair. He discovered that his guess was correct. There were indeed a lot of treasures here. Although he wasn't picking them up, they would still be of great benefit to him. After comparing them vertically and horizontally, Fang Qingshan had a rough idea of what he should do. Then, he found a place and laid out all 13 treasures in a row. Shua! In a split second, everyone in the trade fair moved upon hearing the commotion. In an instant, the area in front of Fang Qingshan's stall was filled with people. Of course, these people weren't here to watch the show. Apart from the group of people who were interested in Fang Qingshan and wanted the treasures in other people's hands, the others were all interested in the demon-vanquishing sword in Fang Qingshan's hand. Most of these people were geniuses from various sects, and there were even some elders from the Dao sect. From the peak immortal realm to the peak god emperor, there was everyone. Although there were many people, it wasn't difficult to trade. That was because Fang Qingshan had already set his eyes on the item. The reason why he had called them over was because he wanted them to bid and see if they could bring out something that would interest him. After all, Fang Qingshan's demon-vanquishing sword was a truly powerful item. He had a certain degree of dominance. Although the trade was fast and Fang Qingshan's 13 treasures were traded in no time, the various treasures he took out still opened the eyes of the crowd and shocked them again and again. In order to trade for the demon-vanquishing sword in Fang Qingshan's hands, the crowd displayed their own abilities, and various treasures emerged one after another. Among them was the peerless wine, the Emperor wine. The so-called Emperor wine wasn't the wine that the Emperor drank, nor was it the wine brewed by the Emperor. Instead, it used the origin of at least one venerable Emperor and several god emperors as raw materials. Of course, only a little was needed. Even so, it was still very amazing. After all, it was the origin power. If too much was used, it would hurt the origin power and cause Dao injuries. It would be troublesome to recover and advance. With the help of other treasures of heaven and earth, it was brewed in a special brewing method. It was an upper level 3 wine and was an excellent supplementary medicine for God Emperor's cultivation. It could increase the cultivation speed by 3 times. However, although the effect was good, it was usually hard to find. First of all, it was not easy to find a winemaker who could brew such a peerless wine. Second, it was easy to get a god emperor's origin, but it was not so easy to get a venerable emperor's origin. Therefore, they were usually custom-made and rarely circulated in the market. This time, the one who took out the wine was an elder from the Dao sect. He had obtained it from a relic, but his cultivation had already reached the peak of the god emperor realm. Therefore, although it was good, it did not have much effect on him. Therefore, he took it out to trade. Unfortunately, it was not very attractive to Fang Qingshan. After all, his cultivation speed had never been slow. However, the other god emperors looked at it with bright eyes. They could not wait to snatch it from him. For them, it was a great thing to be able to increase their cultivation speed by 3 times. After all, the further they went, the slower their cultivation speed would be. They were not like Fang Qingshan, who had the timeless Arkansas. Once he made a breakthrough, he could directly skip the early god emperor realm and enter the early god emperor realm. This would save him millions or even tens of millions of years. With good wine, he naturally did not lack spiritual roots. The heavenly talisman tree. As the name suggested, it was a talisman tree. Other trees bore fruits, but it bore talismans. Although it was not as good as the Wushuang fruit tree that Fang Qingshan had previously, it was still a high-grade LV3 talisman tree. The heavenly talisman tree did not blossom or bear fruit. However, the leaves that grew on the heavenly talisman tree were the best material for talismans. There were even natural talismans that could produce all kinds of talismans. These talismans contained divine abilities and were very powerful. The talismans that were refined by them were not inferior to the talismans that Kongchang used previously. They might even be better than the talismans that were used previously. As for natural talismans, the strongest effect could even be comparable to the attack of a late god emperor. Although such talismans were rare, they were still very rare. Logically speaking, the value of this treasure was higher than the demon-subduing sword. After all, Generally speaking, the value of spiritual roots was higher than spiritual treasures. This was because spiritual treasures could only be used by one person, while spiritual roots could benefit everyone. Moreover, the demon-subduing sword was only a very ordinary peak supreme treasure. Although the grade of this treasure was slightly lower, it was more valuable than the demon-subduing sword. Of course, the demon-subduing sword was only ordinary because Fangqing Shan's standards were too high. The most important thing was that the heavenly talisman tree took too long to grow. Chapter 1588. As a matter of fact, the better the effect and the higher the grade of these heavenly treasures, the longer it would take for them to mature. It should be known that the ginseng fruit and the immortality peach needed 3,000 years to bloom, 3,000 years to bear fruit, and 3,000 years to ripen. It took almost 10,000 years for a batch of fruits to be harvested. The ginseng fruit and the immortality peach were just low-grade spiritual roots, yet they still needed so much time. Not to mention the heavenly talisman precious tree, which was a high-grade 3 spiritual root. The leaves used for refining talismans were fine, but the natural talismans needed 10 times or even 100 times more time than the ginseng fruit and the immortality peach. Of course, although this period of time seemed very long, it was nothing to these god-emperors who lived as long as the heavens and earth. It was just a period of closed-door cultivation. Even so, it still needed time. This was a trade-off between long-term benefits and immediate benefits. Most importantly, although the heavenly talisman treasure tree was not bad, it could only be used to protect the juniors of the sect. It could be used as a trump card to save one's life. Generally speaking, it was more useful to a major power than a divine tree. They didn't care about the length of time. No matter how long it took, they could wait. Compared to an individual, the devil-subduing sword could play a greater role. The one who took out this treasure tree was an itinerant cultivator who had reached the peak late God-Emperor realm. Obviously, he didn't need to increase his foundation and didn't want to wait so long to exchange for resources by selling talismans. It was better to trade for the devil-subduing sword. In this way, not only could he defeat ordinary peak God-Emperors, but he could also collect resources faster. Therefore, in the eyes of sects, clans, or people like Fangqing Shan who didn't value the devil-subduing sword, the value of the heavenly talisman precious tree was naturally higher. However, for an individual, especially an itinerant cultivator who wanted to increase his strength quickly, the devil-subduing sword was more suitable for him. In addition to spiritual wine and spiritual roots, there were also spiritual pills called Heavenly Emperor's One-Line Sky. 50 Great Daos, 49 Heavenly Evolutions. A one-line sky, a slim chance of survival. A one-line sky, a critical point. In other words, this pill was different from other pills and there were risks involved. Even so, everyone went crazy when they heard the name of the medicine, especially those at the peak divine emperor realm. Their eyes were bloodshot. If it weren't for the fact that they were in the Dowell sect, they wouldn't be able to escape even if they snatched the medicine. They would have already attacked the Dowell sect. Even Fangqing Shan was very surprised that someone would be willing to take out such an item. After all, even though the pill was a one-time use item, it was still more valuable than the demon vanquishing sword. This was because the Heavenly Emperor's one-line sky was different from the previous Emperor's wine. It was not used to assist in cultivation. Instead, it required the dragon phoenix fruit of the dragon phoenix tree as an auxiliary ingredient to refine the Emperor 9 Steps pill. It was specially used to break through barriers. However, the 9-Step Emperor pill was a top-notch spiritual pill that could help one break through to the God Emperor realm. However, the Heavenly Emperor's One-Line Sky was a peerless elixir that could help one break through to Sovereign Venerable realm, just like the Emperor's Stone. It was just that the effect was much weaker. In the end, there was only a sliver of hope in the One-Line Sky. Moreover, the degree of danger was not the same. After taking the Emperor's Stone, as long as one's foundation wasn't too bad, there was almost a 100% chance that one could break through to the Venerable Emperor realm. Moreover, it was a natural breakthrough, and there wouldn't be any rejection. However, the Heavenly Emperor's one-line sky was different. Not only was the probability of breaking through incomparable to the Emperor's stone, but during the process of taking it, if one wasn't careful, one might die before he could enjoy the benefits brought by the pill. But this was already very good. After all, this was an item that could help one break through to the venerable Emperor realm. Not to mention helping one break through to the venerable Emperor realm, there were very few heaven and earth treasures that could help one break through to the divine Emperor realm. Each of them was extremely precious. Unfortunately, this thing was the same as the previous Emperor wine. It might be something that others would go crazy for, but it was nothing to Fang Qingshan. Because he had the timeless arc and the eternal blessing, he didn't need this thing at all. As long as he maintained his current level, breaking through was just a matter of pushing the boat along the current. As for Mosquito Dowrin, as long as he had enough resources, he could break through directly. In the past, he had to worry about the Tree of Worlds doppelganger. Now that he had the seed of the innocuous fruit tree, which contained his lifetime's origin energy and experience, he naturally didn't need to take the risk of using the Heavenly Emperor's one-line sky. In addition, there were the Supreme Treasures Sealing Sky Lock and Earthly Lock, the Ancient Holy Elixir, the Dew Sky Wonder Elixir, the Epic Chapter, and the Twilight of All Heavens. Numerous rare and precious treasures were continuously taken out by these people, causing the surrounding people to exclaim again and again. Every single one of these items were rare, precious, and special. Generally speaking, they would be the finale of a large-scale auction. Yet, they were being taken out one after another. Naturally, it would cause people to be shocked. Of course, the reason why these people took out so many treasures was because of Fang Qingshan. Actually, it was also because of Fang Qingshan's throwing a brick to attract jade. If he had not taken out the top-notch treasure, the Demon Subduing Sword, these people would not have taken out their best treasures so easily. In the end, many people weren't even aiming for the Devil Suppressing Sword. After all, although this item was good, for most people, the Emperor Wine and Sky Emperor's one-line sky were obviously better. In the end, the most important thing in cultivation was still cultivation. When one's cultivation was strong, everything would rise with the tide. When one's cultivation was weak, one wouldn't be able to hold onto a good opportunity. Therefore, this small trade fair that had gathered because of Fang Qingshan became the most popular place for trading. Everyone took out all sorts of supreme treasures. Even if they weren't useful to you, they might be useful to you. Even if you don't like this one, maybe the other one will make you unable to put it down. Of course, the more people there were, the more good items there were, and the more choices there were. It was inevitable that the prices would rise. Fortunately, everyone was still rational. After all, this wasn't a bidding war like an auction. Although the prices were higher than before, it was still within the acceptable range. Those who managed to get their hands on the items were naturally overjoyed, while those who didn't were not discouraged. All sorts of numinous treasures, supreme spirit wines, natural treasures, top-notch void ships, incomplete treasure maps from ancient ruins, top-notch formation diagrams, Emperor-level Dao books, and innate abilities appeared one after another. There was nothing that one couldn't think of. This caused a series of exclamations. This also caused the number of people who came to trade to increase. Because of this, a virtuous cycle was formed. Chapter 1589. In fact, most things in the world were like this. They were all a circle, a cycle. It was like Tai Chi, the balance between heaven and earth. The more people there were, the more treasures they would bring out. And the more treasures there were, the more people would be attracted, and the more treasures they would bring out, the more treasures they would bring out, and the more people they would bring out. In the end, other than the demon vanquishing sword in Fang Qingshan's hands, the other items were just ordinary. In the eyes of many, even the demon vanquishing sword could not compare to the Emperor Wine or the Heavenly Emperor's one-line sky. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had made his move earlier and was more decisive. In addition, the items he traded were a little different. For example, the Emperor Wine and the Heavenly Emperor's one-line sky, which were treasures that others could not bear to part with, were nothing in Fang Qingshan's eyes. It would be best if he could get it, but he would not force it if he could not. On the other hand, those treasures with very biased effects and unusual methods caught Fang Qingshan's attention. Everyone's goals were different, so there was no conflict. Therefore, in the end, he took out all 13 treasures and traded them, and the rewards were very gratifying. Not only did he obtain the treasures that the Timeless Ark needed to advance, but he also obtained many treasures that could strengthen the Timeless Ark himself, the World Tree clone, and even the foundation of Mosquito Dowrin. Zhang Xian had traded the 13 treasures for what he wanted, and he had also developed a new skill, stone gambling. He would no longer have to worry about the eternal heavenly vessel's future breakthroughs or the lack of suitable treasures for the eternal divine furnace. It could be said that he had achieved an unprecedented success in this trade fair. In the future, what Fang Qingshan needed to do was not just explore the various dangerous places. First, although there were many treasures in the dangerous places, he needed too many. Moreover, some of the dangerous places were too dangerous, and the slightest carelessness could lead to death. The risk was too great. Didn't you see that the Tao Will Sect Patriarch had fallen because of this? He did not even have to use the backup plan that he had prepared. Therefore, what he needed to do was wander around the various stone gambling dens in the universe and use the eternal mind lamp technique to explore for level 4 treasures. Yes, level 4 treasures. He didn't even need a peak rank 3 treasure. The reason for this was that Fang Qingshan didn't want to attract too much attention. After all, he bought a lot of things and didn't open them every single time. However, the treasures in his hands were endless, and it was impossible for him not to attract attention. Furthermore, when that time came, even a peak level 3 supreme treasure would not be of much use to him. After all, with this breakthrough, Fang Qingshan's cultivation base would almost reach the late-stage Divine Emperor realm. For others, even a peak Deity Emperor would be able to use a peak Deity Emperor's treasure, let alone a late Deity Emperor. However, this was not the case for Fang Qingshan, especially the Timeless Ark, which was probably at the peak of Immortal Realm. After all, he had previously prepared 3 peak level 3 treasures from the Tao Will Sect Secret Vault. In addition, there was definitely no lack of such treasures among the Void Stones he had chosen this time. Furthermore, once his cultivation broke through, the sect would give him even more resources. In this way, Fang Qingshan could probably start to break through to the Ancient Era level very soon. Once the Timeless Ark broke through to the Ancient Era level, according to Fang Qingshan's plan, the Eternal Divine Furnace unit would need to be integrated with a level 4 treasure. The only trouble was probably the construction of the All Heavens Tao Verification Techniques Emperor chapter. After all, an Emperor-level cultivation method was not like a Deity Emperor-level cultivation method, which could be satisfied as long as one had enough Tao value. An Emperor-level cultivation method was rare, and it was not passed down to the heirs. In the universe, the reason why so many peak Deity Emperors could not break through was because they lacked the corresponding cultivation method. Even in the entire Tao Will Sect, the number of years of foundation could only be counted on one hand. Putting this aside, after getting what he wanted, Fang Qingshan did not wait for the trade fair to end. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that the trade fair was still very popular and went straight back. Firstly, he had already traded his 13 supreme treasures and bought so many void stones. He didn't have any extra money on him. Although he was envious of many of the items being traded, he didn't have the capital to trade. If he continued to stay here, he would only be able to watch and drool for nothing. This feeling of longing was really uncomfortable. Since it was like this, he naturally did not want to see it. Secondly, Fang Qingshan could not wait to return to his dojo. Because everything was ready, he only needed one thing. From the beginning of the inner disciple competition until now, he had experienced so many things. Today, he had finally prepared all the things that the Timeless Ark needed to advance. The construction of the All Heavens Tao Verification Techniques Deity Emperor chapter had also reached a critical moment. His cultivation had long reached the peak Immortal Realm. Everything was waiting for the Timeless Ark to advance. The timeless arc had successfully advanced, the eternal blessing had descended, and the cultivation technique had been perfected. Naturally, his cultivation had broken through. Now, what he had to do was return to the dojo and open the treasures that he had bought from the Void Stones to see what was inside. After all, although he could confirm that these Void Stones were real and that the treasures inside were not low-grade, he still did not know what they were. Perhaps there were treasures that were more suitable for the timeless Arc Divine Furnace unit. Then, he would have to combine the various treasures that he had just obtained from the 13 treasures and choose the most suitable treasures to integrate into the timeless Arc Divine Furnace unit. Then, he could directly break through to the immortal realm. When that time came, the eternal blessing would perfect the All Heavens Tao Verification Techniques Deity Emperor chapter and break through to the God Emperor realm in one fell swoop. After Fong Qingshan returned to Samsara Planet, the World Tree Clone and Mosquito Dowrin also returned not long after. This time, Mosquito Dowrin bought 7 Void Stones from the Silver Treasure Bowl, while the World Tree Clone bought 3 from the Gold Treasure Bowl. It was not that there were fewer genuine Void Stones in these 2 treasure bowls. One had to admit that the famous Void Stones were not for nothing. Since they had split up just like that, it was not without reason. In general, the Gold and Silver Treasure Bowls had more genuine items than the Iron Treasure Bowls, both in terms of quantity and probability. However, having more genuine items did not mean that there were more treasures. There was also the issue of price. Therefore, among the Gold and Silver Treasure Bowls, Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree only chose a total of 10 items. As for the rest of the trade fair and the celebration, it was none of Fong Qingshan's business. After all, he had traded everything that needed to be traded, and there were unexpected gains. It could be said that he had achieved great success. As for the celebration, he had personally visited Jiang Overlord not long after his breakthrough. Yi Daoxian had also congratulated him, so there was no need for him to join in the fun. Chapter 1590. Phew! After returning to his dojo, Fong Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. Although he did not encounter any danger this time, the consumption of his primordial spirit was still quite large. Firstly, it was the matter of stone gambling. Seeing the treasures being completely exposed in front of his eyes, yet he couldn't completely take them for himself. This kind of feeling was really a kind of torture for Fong Qingshan, who was like the 1-meter-high sky and left nothing alive wherever he went. Moreover, not only did he have to endure the desire to collect all the treasures in one go, he had to be careful and blend in with the light at the same time. He couldn't reveal too much of an abnormality because he was deeply afraid that others would know that he could pry into the Void Stone. On the other hand, there were the 13 treasures that were traded. Looking at the treasures that were taken out one after another, Fong Qingshan was drooling and wanted to rob them. However, he could only think about it. He had not lived enough yet. What he did not know was that others had the same thoughts as him. If it had not been for the Daoul sect, they would have robbed him long ago. However, regardless of which aspect it was quite taxing on his mind. Only when everything was done and he returned to his dojo did Fong Qingshan completely relax. Next, he had to open all the Void Stones that he, Mosquito Dowrin, and the World Tree Clone had bought. On one hand, it was because of what he had mentioned earlier. Even though Fong Qingshan had already obtained quite a lot of good stuff from the 13 Grade 3 treasures, it was still better for him to compare the goods with the others first. It was best to place all of the good stuff together and look for the best. If there were better things, but he had already integrated them into the Divine Furnace unit in advance, it would not be worth it. Moreover, he couldn't wait to see what good stuff was inside these Void Stones. Although Fong Qingshan already knew that these Void Stones were real and that they were all treasures, he had not opened them yet. It was only written that the treasures were spirit treasures, spirit roots, spirit beasts, or other things. He had no idea. The feeling of opening one treasure after another with his own hands was like unveiling the mysterious veil of a beautiful woman. It was very intoxicating. I wonder if I'll be lucky enough to get a level 4 supreme treasure this time. Looking at the Void Stone in front of him, Fang Qingshan thought to himself, although he knew that the probability of this happening was so low that it might not happen. After all, be it the 5 void stones that he chose, the 7 void stones that Mosquito Darren chose, or the 3 void stones that the World Tree clone chose. Although the aura of each seed was stronger than that of the Wushang fruit tree, it was limited. Or rather, it could be said that there was no qualitative breakthrough. After all, Fang Qingshan had seen a level 4 treasure and a venerable sovereign. However, none of these treasures gave him the same feeling. Even so, it was still necessary to have a dream. What if it came true? Putting all these aside, Fang Qingshan's wish was just a beautiful wish. If he had it, he would naturally be happy. If he didn't, it would not matter, considering that he had opened too many void stones this time. If he calcined them bit by bit with his divine sense, even with the help of the timeless arc, it would still be very slow for him to break through to the middle stage God Emperor. Moreover, if there was a better way, why not use it? Therefore, when Mosquito Darren came back, he specially bought a stone-cutting knife. He did the same thing. Just like before, Fang Qingshan's saber seemed to have a mind of its own. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, he followed the internal situation of the void stones that he had seen earlier. In just a few moves, he had opened all the void stones as if he was peeling off their skins. For a moment, the micro-world of the timeless arc was full of splendor. From time to time, flowers fell from the sky, golden lotuses appeared on the ground, purple chi filled the sky, auspicious light condensed, auspicious chi rose, dragons and tigers moved, swords and sabers rang together. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had the foresight to open all the grand formations on the Samsara star before opening the void stones. Then, he took out the timeless arc and escaped into the sail world of the timeless Arkansas. The reason for this was to conceal the mysteries of heaven. If too many supreme treasures were opened in a short period of time, the change in luck would be too great, and it would easily attract the attention of others. Secondly, if there were treasures inside the void stones, there would be a series of strange phenomena. The heaven and earth would celebrate for these supreme treasures that had been hidden for a long time to see the light of day again. For example, when Fang Qingshan opened the innocuous fruit tree, the situation of the innocuous fruit tree turning back into a seed after failing to pass the sovereign tribulation was shown at a speed that was thousands or even tens of thousands of times faster. It was precisely because of this lesson that Fang Qingshan had prepared an extra trick. Otherwise, the entire Dao sect would probably be alarmed at this moment. At the same time, Fang Qingshan's secret would be revealed to the public. What followed would be a fatal disaster. What a pity! After opening all the void stones, Fang Qingshan sighed greedily as he looked at the dozens of supreme treasures laid out in a row. Although he had mentally prepared himself, Fang Qingshan could not help but feel a little regretful when he saw that none of these treasures were even level 4 supreme treasures. Level 4 supreme treasures, the infinite void, were almost the highest level of existence in the universe, just like the connate supreme treasures in the desolation. Although Fang Qingshan had seen many level 4 supreme treasures, such as the Emperor's Slaying Blade, the Path Ranking, the People's Umbrella, the 4 Seas 8 Desolation Sword, regardless of whether they were illusions, broken, or complete, none of them belonged to him. The only Emperor-level treasure was given to him by the Dao sect's patriarch before he disappeared. He saw that Yi Futian was talented and wanted to help the Dao sect one last time. He used it as a life-saving trump card, but he could not use it lightly. Furthermore, it was a one-time use. However, fortunately, he had mentally prepared himself. He knew that he would be lucky if he got it, and it was his fate if he didn't, so he did not feel too sad. After calming himself down, he felt completely different when he looked at the 15 supreme treasures again. For a moment, Fang Qingshan was grinning from ear to ear. This was because these 15 supreme treasures were all level 3 supreme treasures, and only a small portion of them were at the early stage of level 3. Most of them were above level 3, and there was more than one that was at the peak of level 3. Good lord, he had just traded 13 level 3 supreme treasures earlier, and now he had even more. After losing the demon vanquishing sword, he had 2 more peak level 3 supreme treasures. Most importantly, these 2 peak level 3 supreme treasures were not comparable to the demon vanquishing sword at all. Even though they were not as good as Zhugajin's 8 treasures root umbrella, they were not too far behind. If others were to find out about this, perhaps even Qian Duo and Zhugajin would have thoughts of robbing him. If others knew that he was slightly regretful that he did not have a level 4 supreme treasure, they would probably attack him together. Chapter 1591. Because of Fang Qingshan's foresight, he did a good job of keeping his secret. Not only did he activate the formation and hide in the small world of the Timeless Ark, but he also had the supreme treasures with him to disturb the heavenly secrets. Therefore, apart from himself, no one else knew what he had gained. 15 supreme treasures. Yes, all of the void stones had been opened, and each one was a treasure. Moreover, these 15 treasures were all grade 3. Compared to the 13 supreme treasures that Fang Qingshan had traded earlier, their overall quality was much better in terms of both quantity and quality. Among them, there was the seed of the innocuous fruit tree that had already bloomed. The other 14 treasures were a fishing rod, a fragment with reincarnation aura, a star core, a flying claw, a formation map, a handkerchief, a crystal skull, a broken ship, a broken tooth, a spiritual root, an egg, a golden stamp, a needle, and a thread. Among them, there were only 3 at early grade 3. They were the formation map, the crystal skull, and the spiritual root. Apart from the seed of the innocuous fruit tree in Fang Qingshan's hand, there was a fragment with reincarnation aura, a handkerchief, a golden stamp, a needle, a thread, and a star core. High grade 3 treasures were the broken ship, an egg, and a broken tooth. As for the peak grade 3 treasures, there was a fishing rod and a flying claw. There was nothing much to say about the early grade 3 treasures. It was not that Fang Qingshan looked down on them, nor was it that they were too ordinary. It was just that they were born at the wrong time. At least, apart from giving them to Mosquito Dowrin to devour, they could only be used as currency for trading. The formation map was called the 13 Gates Evil Formation. The 7 Thoughts of Love and the 6 Demons of the Realm of Desire were called the 13 Limits. This was a formation chart that used the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures as a formation. It was actually quite good. After all, as mentioned earlier, Chang Liushui's hatred saber technique had amazed even Zhugajin. In the various worlds, there was also the Heavenly Emperor of 7 emotions and the Great Buddha of 6 sensory pleasures. Both of them relied on the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures to become venerable emperors, and they were not at the bottom. Although this formation was set up with the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures, it was unknown whether it was because the person who made the formation wasn't particularly proficient in it, or because of the limitations of the materials used, or some other reason. In any case, it wasn't that amazing. Also, Fang Qingshan already had the Zhot Eon Star Formation and the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation in his Timeless Arkansas. The Lotus of Bliss also had the effect of stimulating the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Therefore, the value of this item was naturally greatly reduced in Fang Qingshan's hands. As for the next treasure, the Crystal Skull, it was the skull of a strange beast. It was crystalline in color and emitted an ancient aura, as if it was glowing. Its main effect was to control the soul and mind. However, its effect was obviously not too special. Moreover, the Death Scythe, the Life and Death Gourd, and even the Bell of Chaos could affect the soul and primordial spirit. Therefore, this item was obviously not very helpful to Fang Qingshan, just like the previous formation charts. Although the spirit root was also very ordinary, it was a mixed element spirit fruit, which meant that it had no attributes and had no other effects. Its grade was higher than the dragon and phoenix fruit tree, but its value was obviously far inferior. After all, the dragon and phoenix fruit tree had incredible medicinal effects. After taking it, it was especially beneficial to one's body. Moreover, not only could it be taken directly, but it could also be refined into a kind of 9-step emperor pill with this spiritual fruit as the main ingredient. It was a top level 3 spiritual pill, the ancient emperor pill. However, the fruit of this spiritual root would at most have some effect on those who had just entered the divine emperor realm. It could help them quickly consolidate their cultivation. Fortunately, it had no attribute, which gave it extra points. After all, anyone could take it. However, compared to the previous 2 treasures, although this spiritual root was also ordinary and did not have much effect on Fang Qingshan, it could strengthen his foundation. At the same time, it had a great effect on the Tree of World Clone. Its value was higher than the previous 2 treasures. As for the medium level 3 treasures, the seed of the innocuous fruit tree was one of them. In fact, according to the origin energy and cultivation experience of the innocuous fruit tree, its grade should be higher than this. Unfortunately, because of the thunder tribulation, it had consumed a lot of energy. Although it was able to replace the flower with the tree and escape, it did not completely avoid it and consumed another part. Therefore, only the medium level 3 treasure was left. However, no matter what grade it was, it had nothing to do with Fang Qingshan or Mosquito Dowrin, because he had already been booked by the Tree of World's Clone. This was a great opportunity for him to improve his cultivation by leaps and bounds. It would help him catch up with his original body and even break through to the venerable Emperor realm. As for the fragment with the aura of reincarnation, although it was just a fragment, it was still very important. At least this item would have a great effect on Fang Qingshan's natal spirit treasure, the reincarnation mirror. Although Fang Qingshan did not use the reincarnation mirror often, it did not mean that it was not important. This item was like Sanqing's walking stick, the Rui scepter, and the Qingping sword. It was a doctrine-proving spirit treasure. In terms of importance, it was even more important than the Tai Chi painting, the Pangu's banner, and the 4 fairy-slaying swords. The reason why it was not used was not because this treasure was useless, but because its real function was to carry the Great Way. It was not used for fighting. Once it was damaged, the origin energy would suffer, and it could easily cause Dao injuries. Once Dao injuries were caused, the Great Way would be cut off. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary or when one was very confident, one should not use it lightly. Moreover, Fang Qingshan had the timeless arc, so he naturally had less time to use this treasure. Speaking of which, this fragment with the aura of reincarnation, although it was only a fragment and only a part of numinous treasure. However, he still had to see what its original form was. In the desolation, a leaf of the green lotus of creation had transformed into the Khanate 5-direction flag, which was the top defensive treasure of the desolation. It was the same here. Although this item did not evolve into a new treasure, its value was self-evident. The original form of this item was the same as the 6 paths of reincarnation in the desolation, and even the 6 paths of reincarnation golden plate in Hodu's hands. However, the 6 paths of reincarnation in the desolation, and even the 6 paths of reincarnation golden plate in Hodu's hands were only products of the desolation. They were at most at the peak of the 1st level, and at most the 2nd level. However, the original form of this fragment was a chaotic reincarnation, and it was a top-level one. It was at least a reincarnation fragment from an ancient world like the Doctrine Chaotic world. No one knew how it had broken, but it was wrapped in the treasure soil. Naturally, its grade was not the same as before. If this item was refined into the Samsara mirror, it would save time to slowly refine and nurture it, and it could carry a stronger Great Way faster. Chapter 1592. Although the Mirror of Reincarnation was rarely used by Fang Qingshan, its usefulness was undeniable. Furthermore, the power of the Mirror of Reincarnation was not to be underestimated. If not for the fact that the timeless arc was a product of the primordial world, it might not even be as powerful as the Mirror of Reincarnation. After all, this was Fang Qingshan's personal item. Normally speaking, Even if a normal treasure was compatible with the user, it would only be able to unleash 100% of its power. However, natal spirit treasures and natal divine abilities were different. In his hands, he could unleash 200% or even more of its power. This was a matter of compatibility. As for the handkerchief, wasn't that Fong Qing felt like a sissy. It was a female's treasure, or rather, it was not suitable for him to use. The real problem was that its power wasn't outstanding and powerful. This treasure looked like a treasure net. When not in use, it was thin and the size of a square inch. When in use, it was thousands of feet wide. It could emit a colorful screen that resembled 5 colored ice. It could create illusions that mesmerized the eyes. It could also emit 5-colored light to defend against enemies. In terms of camouflage, although it was of a higher grade, it was not as professional as the hibernation pearl. In terms of defense, it was no match for Fong Qingshan's pure defensive treasures like the Void Armor and the Red Lotus of Fire in the Timeless Arkansas. It was even weaker than the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth. Therefore, the fate of this treasure was basically decided. In fact, it was not just this treasure. As long as it was him, his 2 doppelgangers, the Timeless Ark, the Mirror of Reincarnation, and other treasures that were of no use, there were only 2 ways out. One was to be consumed by Mosquito Dowrin as a resource to increase his cultivation level and speed up his cultivation. Although it seemed like a waste, it was a 3rd-level treasure after all. Many people yearned for it, but could not get it. Yet, he gave it to Mosquito Dowrin to consume. Although it was more important to increase one's cultivation level, other spiritual treasures and spiritual pills were just external items. However, if others were to find out, their hearts would still ache to the point of vomiting blood. However, if one were to put himself in their shoes, not to mention Fong Qingshan, anyone would make the same choice. He might even be crazier than Fong Qingshan. He would spend all his money to support Mosquito Dowrin at the fastest speed and with the greatest efficiency. Even if he had to use all the resources he had, he would make Mosquito Dowrin a venerable sovereign. Unfortunately, if the difference in cultivation between the clone and the main body was too great, regardless of whether it was higher or lower, it was not a good sign. If it was too low, it would be equivalent to being useless, just like the World Tree clone. If not for the fact that he had some fortuitous encounters recently and obtained the seed of the origin of destruction and the invulnerable fruit tree, he would probably not be far from being eliminated. If it was too high, it could easily cause a backlash. Moreover, Fong Qingshan himself had the Timeless Arkansas. Not only was he also a big eater, but he could also feed his main body. Naturally, he could not just focus on Mosquito Dowrin. Obviously, he would eat the Timeless Ark first. Come to think of it, the second method was to trade it out. Just like how Fong Qingshan threw out the 13-grade 3 treasures of the trade fair, he could trade for some items that he didn't have, even if they were of a lower grade but had unique effects. There was also the Golden Badge. If he had obtained it in the past, Fong Qingshan would definitely have been overjoyed. After all, it recorded a top-notch Divine Emperor-level cultivation method, or even a Venerable Sovereign-level cultivation method. It was just that it lacked the Venerable Sovereign part, so it could only be regarded as Divine Emperor level. Unfortunately, now that Fong Qingshan had entered the Pathwell list, with the help of the Emperor-level Wei Will, he had not had time to digest hundreds of Wei Wills. The Divine Emperor-level cultivation methods in the Pathwell Palace were more or less open to him. Therefore, now he did not lack Divine Emperor-level cultivation methods. However, obtaining this item was better than nothing. As for the needle, it was called Break, which meant to cut off the path of the Great Way. It cannot be underestimated. Although he only had 1 needle, it could not turn into a sky full of meteors when released. It was as thin as a cow's hair, as if it would break with a light snap. But in fact, it was somewhat similar to Mosquito Dowrin's mosquito stinger. It was indestructible, and there was nothing it could not break. In particular, this thing was extremely small and almost undetectable. Once released, its speed was even more astonishing, making it impossible to defend against and completely unable to react. It was a peerless divine weapon for home travel killing, and robbing. There was also that line. It looked ordinary and did not have any domineering aura, but gave Fang Qingshan a surprise that was no weaker than the previous break needle. It was called the Karma line, and it was said that the cause and effect of 1,000 miles were linked by a single line. It had the same effect as the marriage line, but it was a different approach. This item had no offensive or defensive abilities, but it was extraordinary in terms of tracking. As long as one was targeted by it, there was basically no way to escape. It could be said that with this item, as long as there was no treasure that could restrain it, once it gave chase, there would be no place to hide in the entire universe, not even in the infinite void. This item could not only be used to chase and kill enemies, but could also be used to find people, items, and even explore ruins, caves, and treasures. It only needed one item, or even one aura, to find it. As for the last star nucleus, it was not too bad. As soon as it was opened by Fang Qingshan, it was like the sun rising from the east. It leaped up and turned into a fiery red ball that rose up within the small world. Even though the small world had enough space, when he stretched his arms and legs, he suddenly felt that the space was a little narrow. The most important thing was that not only did his body become bigger, but it also continued to emit light. In an instant, the light was thousands of miles long, illuminating the world. It was as if it was the only source of light in the world. It was so dazzling that it made it difficult for people to open their eyes. The reason why Fang Qingshan said that this item was not too bad was because, although it was only a star nucleus, it was not comparable to the stars in the desolation. Even the sun and moon that Pangu's eyes had turned into, and even the stars in Fang Qingshan's Zhodian star formation, which had been condensed to the peak of the second level, were far inferior to the star nucleus. Similarly, Fang Qingshan's Samsara star could not be compared to it. This was because this item was a natural star nucleus of an ancient chaotic world like the Tao chaotic world. It was unknown whether the world had been destroyed, the star had fallen, or someone had plucked it out. As for its effects, what Fang Qingshan valued the most was its attractive and repulsive force, which was also its magnetic force. It could also restrain metal-type spiritual treasures. As soon as the upper level 3 arc appeared, the Nirvana ship started to shake. This was because it was also a timeless Arkansas. On the body of the ship, there were patterns of giant dragons. It was obvious that this timeless ark had been forged from dragon bones. What puzzled Fang Qingshan was that if this was the Dragon Clan's timeless ark, it would be fine. However, if it was the Dragon Clan's timeless ark, even if it had been broken, how could it have leaked out? Chapter 1593. Yes, to build a timeless ark with the corpses of the dragon race, the amount of corpses needed would be astronomical. The most important thing was not the quantity, but the quality. One must know that, judging from the aura of the eternal heavenly vessel, even though it was broken, it was still a grade 3 upper treasure. One could only imagine how powerful it was when it was in its prime. At the very least, Fang Qingshan's eternal heavenly vessel and Permitha boat could not compare to it. Don't underestimate Fang Qingshan's eternal heavenly vessel just because it was at the supreme rank. In comparison, even many immortal rank heavenly vessels couldn't compare to it. Therefore, the dragon race's timeless ark was at least at the immortal grade or even an eternal grade. To build such a timeless ark, the corpses of dragon race powerhouses would definitely need to be at least at the God Emperor peak level, and not just 1 or 2 of them. If it was built by a dragon race powerhouse, or if it was part of the dragon race's heritage, then there was nothing much to say. They had the strength, resources, and capability to do so. However, the problem was that even if the timeless ark was broken in the end and its eternal true spirit dissipated, it was still a supreme treasure that couldn't be left to wander in the void. If it wasn't the dragon race's timeless ark, then someone must have stolen the corpses of the dragon race and used them to forge the timeless Arkansas. How audacious! Although the dragon race couldn't compare to the sacred Buddha, heavenly diabolism, or immortal spirits, they were definitely the top existences in any place. Someone actually dared to dig up their graves. One had to admit that their courage was commendable. Most importantly, he actually succeeded. This was simply unbelievable, especially since it was mentioned before that in order to forge the timeless arc to this level, the number and quality of the dragon race corpses needed would have to be unimaginable. In the entire universe, in the boundless void, most of the races hoped to be able to rest in peace after death. They did not want to be disturbed by others. Therefore, not only was their cemetery very remote and difficult to find, but it was also very dangerous. Ordinary people who did not know the way would not be able to come out once they entered, let alone dig up the graves and dig up the corpses. Unfortunately, he didn't know if it was because he would run into ghosts if he walked too long at night. How could he not get his shoes wet if he often walked by the river? Paper couldn't keep fire. In the end, they were discovered by the dragons, or perhaps they encountered some other danger. In any case, the timeless arc went through an unprecedentedly fierce battle. In the end, it failed on the verge of victory, and even the eternal spirit was destroyed. The entire sky ship was in ruins. The deck, the hull, the sails, the mast, the tower. Everywhere was filled with hideous cracks and wounds, as well as holes. Not a single part of the ship was in good condition. Logically speaking, Fong Qingshan believed that it belonged to the Dragon Clan. However, the facts before him made him believe the latter. Although the corpse-robbing powerhouse failed on the verge of victory, he obviously made the Dragon Clan pay a heavy price. In the end, even the timeless arc couldn't be brought back. Then, it was swept away by the void undercurrent and was fortunately wrapped in the treasure mud. However, it was also because of this that such a broken timeless arc would have collapsed long ago. Even so, if this item hadn't fallen into the hands of Fong Qingshan or the master of the timeless arc like him, it would probably have turned into rotten wood. It would probably become a rotten piece of wood, a broken artifact that would never be able to display its unparalleled might again. However, in the hands of people like Fong Qingshan, this item could still be used like the Tao Sex Patriarch. Fusing it into the Eternal Heavenly Boat would not only strengthen the Eternal Heavenly Boat's foundation, but even though it was damaged in many places, it still had 3 kilograms of nails. In fact, it might even be able to create an Eternal Divine Furnace unit or a deck weapon unit. As far as Fong Qingshan knew, the deck weapon unit of Wu Mu's martial tomb, the White Bone God Demon Crossbow, seemed to have evolved from a broken Timeless Ark's White Bone Tower. The second upper level 3 treasure was an egg. It was a giant egg the size of a small mountain. Disregarding everything else, just its size alone was enough to show that this giant egg had an extraordinary origin. It must have been a giant and extremely ferocious void beast. The giant egg was white. It was unknown whether it was natural or if it had been carved with dense runes. Either way, it looked very mysterious and profound. Perhaps it was because the giant egg hadn't hatched yet, or because this kind of thing was too rare, or because the records in the Tao Palace were incomplete. In any case, Fong Qingshan didn't recognize what kind of species it was. However, even though that was the case, be it the size of the egg, the aura that it emitted unintentionally, or the faintly fluctuating vitality in the egg, one could tell that this egg was not to be underestimated. Yes, this giant egg had a very strong life force. In other words, given enough time and abundant resources, this thing could still break out of its shell. Fong Qingshan obviously hadn't thought about how to deal with it. Should he treat it like a resource and devour it? Or should he hatch it and use it as a mount, a disciple, or some other way of dealing with it? There were pros and cons to dealing with it. The former was simple, while the latter was troublesome. The former had a low utilization rate, while the latter had a bright future. After all, the aura this egg exuded had reached upper level 3. Perhaps it was a descendant of an emperor. However, it would take a lot of time and resources to nurture them. Moreover, he might not be of much use to Fong Qingshan even if he trained him. After all, it might only be a descendant of an emperor, not an emperor himself. The last treasure was a broken tooth. It was unknown what kind of creature had left this behind, but its hardness was definitely no less than a level 3 supreme treasure. The The most important thing was that this broken tooth was a poisonous tooth. With Fang Qingshan's physique, he was lucky that he didn't fall to the ground from the poison just by smelling a faint scent. It was extremely ferocious. Obviously, the original body of this poisonous tooth was also a terrifying and ferocious beast. It was a poisonous beast. At least, it was unique in terms of using poison. The above treasures were all good, and some were even very suitable to be integrated into the Timeless Ark's divine furnace unit. However, what really made Fang Qingshan happy were the last two. Although he didn't get a level 4 supreme treasure in the end, Fang Qingshan was a little disappointed. However, this was a time that could only be encountered by chance, and it was already a great fortune to have 2 or 3 peak supreme treasures. After all, Fang Qingshan had only brought out 3 peak level 3 supreme treasures from the Dao Will Sect's secret vault last time. This time, he had a total of 5. He had basically gathered all the immortal grade divine furnace units. Chapter 1594. These last 2 treasures delighted Fang Qingshan not just because they were pinnacle level 3 treasures. If that was the case, he would not be able to escape the fate of the demon vanquishing sword. The real reason was that they were not just pinnacle level 3 treasures. Even among pinnacle level 3 treasures, they were not weak. At the very least, the demon vanquishing sword could not compare to them. Even if they could not compare to treasures like the 8 treasures root umbrella, they were definitely not ordinary. Most importantly, their effects were extraordinary. They were very suitable to be integrated into the Timeless Ark and become an eternal divine furnace unit. That was why Fang Qingshan said that including these 2, he had already collected 5 eternal divine furnace units at the immortal level. The last 2 treasures were a fishing rod and a grappling hook. The fishing rod was called the True Spirit Fishing Rod. As the name suggested, it was a numinous treasure that targeted the true spirit. In the universe, there were many numinous treasures that targeted magic power, the physical body, the primordial spirit, and even the nomological laws. However, there were very few that targeted the true spirit. Magic power could be recultivated, the physical body could be rebuilt, the primordial spirit could be reborn, and the nomological laws could be rebuilt. However, without the true spirit, there would be no trace of it at all. Even through reincarnation or the reversal of space-time, it would be difficult to resurrect it. The object was crystal clear, like a natural work of art. It was as precious as porcelain in the eyes of mortals. However, no one would have expected that this seemingly beautiful fishing rod was actually a deadly weapon. It was best at switching between illusion and reality. It could ignore space-time. It was similar to the karma line that Fang Qingshan had just obtained. As long as it targeted something, no matter where it was, it could completely pierce through all kinds of matter, even space-time, and directly fish up the true spirit of a living being. There were no powerful defensive treasures. Ordinary ones would not do. At the same level, it would at least need defensive treasures like the Red Lotus of Fire or the Great Void Divine Armor, or treasures that could restrain the true spirit fishing rod, such as the Treasurefall coin. In addition, one's own cultivation level must far surpass that of the owner of the true spirit fishing rod. The true spirit would be so stable that it could not be shaken. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, it was a supreme treasure for hunting the true spirit. It had a terrifying restraining effect on all living beings. As for the other flying claw, it was called Flying God Claw. Regardless of whether it was its name or its appearance, it seemed very tacky. It was exactly the same as the items used by Jianghu swordsmen in the low-level martial arts world to leap over roofs and vault over walls. However, it was actually a very good treasure. It was somewhat similar to the heavenly divine anchor that Wu Mu had in the martial tomb world. It had the power of the space-time nail and could be used to stabilize the eternal heavenly battleship when it was attacked. Even in the chaotic space, it could be used to stabilize the battleship, making it as stable as Mount Tai, as if it was walking on flat ground. Of course, the Chaos Bell could also do it. However, It wasn't a professional and wasn't as easy as him. After all, there were different professions. Other than stabilizing the void and stabilizing the ship, he also had the effect of isolating the karmic threads. However, the karmic thread relied on a strand of aura, and there was nowhere for it to hide. On the other hand, he could directly lock onto the enemy's warship and then fly into the sky with a claw, directly grabbing onto the enemy's warship and connecting it with his body. It was almost impossible for him to escape. Of course, the premise was that he had to be able to capture the other party first. The other party's timeless arc didn't have the effect of restraining this treasure. Therefore, its function didn't overlap with the karmic threads. After Fong Qingshan admired the 15 treasures one by one, he displayed the treasures that he had previously traded for the other 13 treasures, including the demon vanquishing sword. Fong Qingshan had originally wanted to use these treasures to trade for the timeless Arkansas. To be more precise, they were spirit treasures that could be integrated into the eternal divine furnace unit. However, his plans didn't change as quickly as they had. Who knew that he would actually unlock a new skill for stone gambling? Moreover, he had even obtained 15 void stones. Who knew that when the trade finally began, the treasures that those people took out one after another were blinding? Hence, in the end, not all of the items here were useful to the eternal divine furnace unit. Moreover, because it was a barter, the value was basically clear. Therefore, it was different from the 15 treasures that he had obtained from the void stones. The most powerful one was only a level 3 upper spiritual root. The other items were all level 3 middle or level 3 lower spiritual root. Among them, there were treasures that were useful to the world tree's clone. For example, treasures like the wounding fruit tree seed that contained the power of the wood source, spiritual roots, or other wood attribute treasures. There were also treasures like the Good Fortune Jade Archive that contained a lot of nomological power. In any case, they were either treasures that were useful to the Wood Dao or the World Dao. There were also treasures that were useful to Mosquito Dowrin. Of course, because Mosquito Dowrin wasn't a picky eater, he didn't reject anything. As long as it was a resource, as long as it contained the power of the origin, he could devour it. Therefore, it could be said that everything was useful to him. However, the degree of usefulness varied. It depended on the amount of power of the origin. However, this referred to the aspect of cultivation, which was equivalent to spiritual energy. But cultivation and combat power didn't just include the level of cultivation and the amount of magic power, it also included the primordial spirit, nomological power, and so on. What was useful here was that it was very helpful to Mosquito Doran's great way of origin. It was somewhat similar to the reincarnation fragment that Fong Qingshan had obtained and the reincarnation mirror. Mosquito Doran was born in the Blood Sea and was born with 3 great way of origin: devour, blood, and slaughter. The item that was useful to him was a bloodstone, but it wasn't an ordinary bloodstone. It was an ordinary heavenly treasure that contained the laws of blood. Although such things could not be said to be everywhere in the Blood Sea back then, they were definitely not rare. However, coincidentally, a war broke out where this item was. A war that shook the heavens. The tragedy of this war could be compared to the infinite catastrophes in the desolation, such as the dragon, phoenix, sorcerer, and deification. The world was broken, the Great Way was broken, and billions of living creatures died. Here, hundreds of thousands of divine emperors fought with their lives on the line, and there were even venerable sovereigns who shed their blood. It was rumored that the world cried, and a rain of blood fell from the sky. The mournful cries continued for 10 days to half a month without stopping, and it swept through a small part of the infinite void. Many supreme forces on the list of supreme forces declined because of this. Since it was so tragic, the battlefield was naturally filled with rivers of blood. This bloodstone was born with the law of blood, and it was continuously stained with the blood of countless divine emperors and even venerable sovereigns. Coupled with a bit of luck, it underwent a transformation. From an ordinary heaven and earth treasure, it had directly transformed into a medium LV3 treasure. Even though it was only a medium level 3 treasure, it was somewhat similar to the Eye of the Last Days. It had a low status, but it held great power, and its grade was low, but its effects were extraordinary. Chapter 1595. After all, this bloodstone was stained with the blood of hundreds of thousands of divine emperors, including venerable sovereigns. Divine emperors, venerable sovereigns, and even the breath of them were treasures in the eyes of ordinary people. Pangu opened the sky. Desolation was created by Pangu's body. His breath turned into clouds, his sweat turned into rain, his voice was like thunder, and his eyes were like the sun and the moon. Pangu wasn't even an immortal, but he was already so powerful, not to mention those divine emperors and venerable sovereigns. After devouring so much blood, even if it was a rock, it would probably become a top-grade heavenly treasure. If it fell into someone else's hands, the effect would be the same, and it might even bring a bad ending. After all, compared to oranges, it was poison. For example, if it fell into the hands of Buddhists or angels Templars, it could only be used to purify and suppress people. If it was used to refine weapons, it would be an evil weapon. If it swallowed it to increase its power, it would be possessed by the devil. Because it was the product of many divine emperors and venerable sovereigns' blood, it contained the death energy, blood energy, resentment, and fighting will of those experts. It was stained with blood and killing, so ordinary people couldn't use it. Ordinary people didn't even need to use it. They could be affected by it just by getting close to it, let alone using it. It was born with a magnetic field. Within a certain range, it seemed to freeze time and space, which was as good as top-level ice and snow supreme treasures. As long as someone got close to it, his magic power, flesh, and primordial spirit would be frozen on the spot. Of course, the most important thing was that the countless illusions belonged to those fallen divine emperors. The thoughts of hundreds of thousands of divine emperors were either resentful, unwilling, or fighting against the heaven and earth, or constantly bombarding one's mind. If one was not careful, one would turn into an idiot, a killing machine. At that time, you wouldn't be using it, but it would be controlling you. At that time, some people on the scene knew how precious it was, but they all gave up in the end. For one thing, the original owner had bid a high price, and he knew the value of this thing. For another, when others tried to hold it, they felt like they were in a cultivation calamity battlefield. For a moment, the flames of war were intertwined. Countless dermic powers and spiritual treasures were flashing. The sounds of weapons and spiritual treasures colliding with each other, and the cries of people fighting and killing could be heard continuously. Blood chi soared into the sky, and evil spirits filled the air. There were bursts of Sanskrit sounds, glaring vajras, boundless Buddhist dharma, delivering all living beings from suffering. There were overflowing Tao rhymes, faint immortal sounds, the Taishang heartless, the heaven and earth as the heart. There were heavenly manifestations, 3 heads and 6 arms, fighting the world. Its blood was black and yellow. There were dragon race, phoenix race, angel race. There were all kinds of warriors and Taoists. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but the Buddhist light, Tao connotation, sword chi, saber light, and all kinds of powers were scattered in this world. The power was shocking. From time to time, heaven and earth would weep in sorrow, blood rain would fall from the sky, death bells would ring, and the great Tao would wail. It was like the end of the world had arrived, and it caused everyone to shudder with fear. At that instant earlier, most of them felt as if their minds and willpower had been strangely lost, and if it wasn't for them possessing precious treasures to protect themselves and being watched by the side, they would have probably been lost within the illusion right away and wouldn't even be aware of their own deaths. However, this thing was in the hands of Mosquito Dowrin, and it was like adding wings to a tiger. First of all, this thing might be of little value to others. It was tasteless to eat, but a pity to throw away. But to Mosquito Dowrin, it was a first-class treasure. The power contained in this thing was mixed, and most of it was negative. It was difficult for people to use it. But to Mosquito Dowrin, these were not problems. Think about his background, and you would know a thing or two. Although the sea of blood and the desolation could not be compared to the battlefield behind the bloodstone. But Mosquito Dauran was also different from the past. Most importantly, he was a primordial beast, and he had Fang Qingshan's main body, who had the eternal Dao charm to protect him. How could these negative factors affect him? As for the heterogeneous power, that was even more of a joke. For Mosquito Taoist, there is no such thing as heterogeneous power or pure power. He would not reject anything as long as it was the power of the origin. If the Mosquito Taoist devoured it, the effect would definitely not be inferior to a top-notch level 3 treasure. It would be able to improve him in all aspects, not only in terms of cultivation, but also in terms of laws. But this was not the best way to use it, because if it was used to improve one's cultivation, other treasures could replace it. For example, the handkerchief, the 2 low-grade level 3 treasures, and so on. Anyway, Mosquito Dauran did not mind devouring anything as long as it could strengthen his origin energy. The best way to make use of the Bloodstone was to use it to refine a Tao-proving spiritual treasure for Taoist one. Although he had the double-rim mosquito sting and its power was extraordinary, it was equivalent to his natural power. Of course, as a natural sacred being, he did not lack spiritual treasures. In the past, he had the Death Scythe, the Xianyuan water manipulation flag, and he later obtained Mingyi's Yuan Butcher of Ichi sword, the Blood Shura flag, and the Red Lotus of Fire. However, the Blood Shura flag was left in the desolation by Fang Qingshan and became the Shura clan's treasure. The Xianyuan water manipulation flag was merged with the other 4 Khanate 5-direction flags by Fang Qingshan and became the 5 elements flag. Later, it was integrated into the Red Lotus of Fire. The Death Scythe and the Red Lotus of Fire were integrated into the Timeless Arkansas. In particular, Fang Qingshan had thought about the Red Lotus of Fire. In the end, in order to improve the Timeless Arc, he had no choice but to integrate it into the Timeless Arkansas. Therefore, in the end, Taoist one only had the Yuan-2 of Ichi's sword, which could be considered a handy treasure. Although these 2 treasures were good, they were only good in the desolation, but they had not reached the peak. At least above him, there were the 4 fairy-slaying swords, the God Slayer, Pangu's banner, and so on. It was fine in the past, but as Taoist one's cultivation got higher and higher, although she was constantly refining and nurturing it, it still felt like it could not keep up with the pace. Now, if the Yuan Butcher of Ichi's sword was integrated into the Bloodstone and refined into a treasure, it could be called a treasure. And it would be an absolute treasure for killing. Not only did it conform to Mosquito Dauran's great path of blood, but it also conformed to his great path of killing. If he could also integrate the great path of devouring into it, it would be perfect. In addition, there were many things that were useful to Fang Qingshan. There were things that could improve one's physique, spiritual fruits like the Dragon Phoenix fruit, treasures that could improve one's magical powers, fine wine like the Emperor's wine, elixirs that could improve one's primordial spirit, and books that could improve the laws. These books were not the ones in the Great Path Palace, or even the World of Will. They were books that had been recorded by the Venerable Emperor. Although the effects were less than 10%, it was still very good. After all, not everything could record the Venerable Emperor's voice. Chapter 1596. Why did so many people flock to the Sword Emperor of Storm's sermon? Why did so many people not let go of any opportunity, even though they knew that it was futile to memorize it, and even if they tried to comprehend it by force, they would hurt themselves instead of using other things to record it, and then slowly comprehend it when they went back? The real reason was that there were too few things that could record the Great Way. Even if there were, it would not be in the hands of ordinary people. Last time, Fang Qingshan had to rely on the Everlasting Lotus to record it. He did not expect that he would actually get such a recorded Taoism book this time. Although the effect of this Taoism book was less than 1/10 of the real sermon, it was already very good. After all, if one could listen to 1/10 or 2/10 of an emperor's sermon and comprehend 1/100th of it, it would be a great fortune. With this item, plus the Tao sound he recorded when the Sword Emperor of Storm gave a sermon, and the Tao Intense Sex Ancestors cultivation experience about the Emperor level sealed in his original spirit in the Tao will list, it would be of great help to Feng Qingshan to create the All Heavens Tao verification skill. It would be of great help to Feng Qingshan to create the All Heavens Tao verification skill after he broke through to the Divine Emperor realm. If he could create an Emperor-level manual, it would not only help Feng Qingshan break through to Venerable Emperor, but it would also be of great help to his cultivation after Venerable Emperor. Of course, it was not easy to create an Emperor-level cultivation skill, especially a cultivation skill that was suitable for one's own cultivation. In the heavens and realms, there were many peak divine emperors. Although they were not as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges River, it was obvious just by looking at the peak divine emperors that the Tao Intense sect had encountered last time. However, why didn't they break through to the Emperor realm? Part of the reason was that some of these people had exhausted their potential. Without opportunities, they might not be able to make it through their entire lives. On the other hand, it was because they didn't have opportunities. This opportunity could be the ancient Emperor Elixir or the Heavenly Emperor's Ray of Sky, which could help one break through the bottleneck of the Emperor realm, or it could be a flash of inspiration in one's mind. Similarly, it could be the lack of an Emperor-level cultivation skill. However, having an Emperor-level cultivation skill was not enough. One had to find one that was suitable for oneself. Otherwise, it wasn't that the Tao sect didn't have any Emperor-level cultivation techniques, but why had no one succeeded after so many years? Therefore, it was extremely difficult to create an Emperor-level cultivation method that was suitable for oneself. It was not something that could be improved through one or two cultivation methods, some comprehension, and one or two lectures. However, this was all for later. It would not be too late to wait until Feng Qingshan broke through to God Emperor and the Timeless Arc was upgraded to Immortal rank. Of course, other than what was useful to the World Tree Clone, Mosquito Dowrin, the Reincarnation Mirror, and Feng Qingshan, the most important thing was the Divine Furnace unit that had been integrated into the Timeless Arkansas. This was Feng Qingshan's main purpose this time. After careful selection, Feng Qingshan finally decided on 5 treasures that could be integrated into the Eternal Divine Furnace unit, combining them with the treasures that he had obtained from the Void Stone. 2 of them came from the 15 treasures that had been obtained from the Void Stone. Because the Timeless Arc was advancing from Supremacy to Immortal rank this time, the grade range of the Eternal Divine Furnace unit was basically around medium level 3. If it was slightly better, it could be high level 3, but it could not go any higher. If it was slightly worse, it could even be top level 2 like the Hibernation Pearl, but it could not go any lower. If it went any lower, it would be high level 2. Not to mention that it would not lower the foundation of the Timeless Arc. At least it would not be of much help in improving the foundation of the Timeless Arkansas. If there was really no other way, for example, the advancement of the Timeless Arc was imminent, and there was no choice but to release it, there were only these 5 Eternal Divine Furnace units, and one of them was high level 2, where it could be said that this treasure was too amazing. It was similar to a treasure like the Eye of Doomsday, but its grade was slightly lower. In this case, it was not impossible to settle for the next best thing. After all, special problems could also be dealt with in a special way. However, he had clearly not encountered such a situation. This time, Feng Qingshan had used the 13 treasures to trade for a total of more than 20 treasures. He had also obtained 15 treasures from a Void Stone, for a total of 30 to 40 treasures. Although many of them were not suitable to be integrated into the Timeless Arc Divine Furnace unit, after eliminating those, there was still more than enough to choose from. Whether it was in terms of quantity or quality, they were greatly satisfied. Naturally, there was no need to deliberately lower the requirements. However, there was no need to lower the requirements, and there was no need to increase the grade. It was not that the higher the grade, the better. There was a practical problem to consider. A high grade was, of course, good, but this was only good for the moment. What about the future advancement? One could not only focus on the present, but also consider the future. After all, The grade of Fang Qingshan's Prometha arc was already very high. Generally speaking, it was standard for the Supremacy Timeless arc to be integrated with a level 1 treasure, and integrating a level 2 treasure was already considered top-notch. On the contrary, he was merely at the Supremacy rank, yet he had integrated a level 3 treasure, and there was even a top-notch treasure like the Eye of the Last Days. If he hadn't developed a new skill, stone gambling, he would probably be anxious about whether he would be able to push the Timeless arc to the Eternal rank. It was unknown. After all, not to mention the Eternal rank, even ancient rank treasures had to be integrated into early-stage level 4 treasures. As for rank 4 treasures, many powers at the bottom of the sovereign rankings didn't even have a single one. For example, the 5 great clans of the merchant chaotic world that Fang Qingshan had visited in the past didn't have one. Moreover, it was only early-stage level 4 treasures. If the current Supremacy rank was integrated into a peak level 3 treasure, then what about the Immortal rank, Eternal rank, and Eternal rank treasures? Even if he knew how to stone gambling, it didn't mean that he was omnipotent. In the entire universe, it was extremely rare to find a level 4 treasure. If it really came to that, then he could only pray that he was the son of the great Tao, that the heavens and the earth would help him, and that treasures would fall from the heavens while he sat at home. Alternatively, he could pray that a great tribulation would erupt and engulf the boundless void, and that everyone else would perish while he escaped unscathed from the cataclysm. In that case, he could seize the opportunity to make a fortune from the war. It was just like the Desolation event, when Fang Qingshan had become a scavenger and entered the treasure vaults of the Dragon and Phoenix clans to sweep away their treasures. It was precisely because of this that the 2 top-notch treasures from the Void Stone, the Flying Claw and the Fishing Rod, were eliminated first. Next were the early-stage level 3 treasures, the Formation Diagram, the Crystal Skull, and the Spiritual Root. They were excluded not because their grades weren't suitable, but because they were too ordinary. They weren't powerful, and their effects weren't good. Coupled with the fact that their effects overlapped with the treasures he already had, they were also excluded. The remaining treasures were mid-stage level 3 and high-stage level 3 treasures. Among these treasures, Fang Qingshan hesitated for a while before finally picking out the 2 most suitable ones. Chapter 1597. Among the 15 treasures obtained from the Void Stone, excluding the 5 early level 3 and peak level 3 treasures, there were actually quite a few that could be integrated into the Eternal Divine Furnace unit. Among them, there is no need to mention the seed of the medium level 3 Peerless Fruit Tree. After all, it had already been reserved by the World Tree clone. Most importantly, it was just a seed and not suitable to be used as an Eternal Divine Furnace unit. If it wasn't a seed, but a complete innocuous fruit tree, it could be used as an Eternal Divine Furnace unit. After all, not only did this item have unparalleled defense, but it could also be seen from the Thunder Tribulation earlier that it definitely deserved its reputation among those of the same level. It was probably not inferior to the Creation Green Lotus. Moreover, it had an extremely strong recovery ability. This was something that no Eternal Divine Furnace unit, deck unit, tower unit, or sail unit could compare to. If it had this ability, the Timeless Arc wouldn't have to worry about being damaged in the future. Unfortunately, the innocuous fruit tree was destroyed by the Thunder Tribulation. However, even if it wasn't destroyed by the Thunder Tribulation, it probably couldn't be integrated into the Timeless Arkansas. After all, even the Flying God's Claw and the True Spirit Fishing Rod couldn't do it, let alone the innocuous fruit tree. As for the fragment with Reincarnation Aura, it was actually the same as the seed of the innocuous fruit tree. If it had been a reincarnation treasure at its peak, it would have been very useful to Fang Qingshan's reincarnation law, and its grade would definitely be at peak level 3. It would also be as useful to the reincarnation mirror as the seed of the innocuous fruit tree was to the World Tree clone. Therefore, these 2 treasures were excluded. Among the remaining 8 treasures, the handkerchief and the golden stamp were the first to be taken out. The handkerchief was the same as the other early level 3 treasures. Although it was of a higher grade, its effect overlapped with the Great Void Divine Armor and the Red Hellfire Lotus, and its effect wasn't very good. As for the latter, it was missing the most important part. Just like the Infinite Worlds technique, it only had 10 worlds, 100 worlds, and 1,000 worlds. However, it lacked the Emperor-level Infinite Worlds cultivation technique, so its effect was naturally greatly reduced. Moreover, because it was a cultivation technique, it naturally couldn't be used as an eternal divine furnace unit. As for the needle and thread, they were the 2 treasures that Fong Qingshan had chosen to fuse with the timeless Arkansas. The broken needle and karma thread were of good quality, and they were at the mid-grade of the 3rd rank. Even though they couldn't compare to the Eye of the Last Days, they each had their own advantages, and their effects were pretty good. Among them, the broken needles had the same effect as the Flood Dragon Mosquito Sting. They were indestructible and could pierce through anything. Their speed was as fast as a startled swan. Before anyone could react, they would have already been struck. Most importantly, they came and went without a trace. They excelled in sneak attacks, and almost every stab was accurate. This effect was unique among all the Eternal Divine Furnace units and deck units. The other spirit treasures were either used for frontal attacks, defense, or support. There were even sound wave attacks and soul attacks. However, none of them were used for sneak attacks. It was the same for karmic threads. Even though the effects of this object and the river diagram of Luo's Book of Luo seemed to overlap a little, however, it wasn't the same. Even though the river diagram of Luo could be used to deduce karma, it was more important to deduce the future, deduce changes, and deduce variables. On the other hand, the karma thread only focused on karma. It was possible for others to conceal the deduction, but as long as karma wasn't severed, then it was absolutely impossible to avoid it. As for the remaining star core, Fong Qingshan hesitated for a while. It was different from the handkerchief and the golden badge. Whether it was in terms of quality, grade, or effect, it was very good. However, the only problem was that it overlapped with other treasures. First of all, he could form a magnetic field. However, this magnetic field was like a domain. Although it could suppress his opponent's strength and make him the king within the domain, it was only effective in close combat, and the range was not large. How big was the timeless arc? How fast was it? Therefore, the effects of the domain couldn't be unleashed at all. Moreover, this effect not only overlapped with the effects of the array diagram, but most importantly, it was far inferior to the array diagram. It wasn't just the range, the suppression effect, and the firmness of the space. The only advantage was that it could be unleashed quickly, and it wouldn't be easy for others to dodge. Even so, if someone was really so close to him, he wouldn't need the domain at all. He could just drive the timeless arc and crash into them. As for restraining weapons made of metal, it overlapped with the Treasurefall coin. Moreover, its effect was still inferior to the Treasurefall coin. This was because it could only restrain weapons made of metal, but the Treasurefall coin could restrain all treasures in the world. If there were no other options, such as the formation map and the Treasurefall coin, Fong Qingshan naturally gave up on the treasure without any hesitation. As for the items in high-grade level 3, there was the broken ship, the egg, and the broken tooth. Let's talk about the egg first. It was full of vitality and had a majestic aura. The unborn egg alone was comparable to a high-grade level 3 treasure, so it was likely that it was a direct descendant of an emperor-level ferocious beast. If it could be bred and properly trained, it might become another top-grade ferocious beast in the future. Even if it didn't break through to Venerable Emperor, it would still be able to reach the peak of Divine Emperor as long as there were no accidents. In fact, the best way to make use of it was not to train a ferocious beast to grow. If one could directly possess it when it was weak and refine it into a second primordial spirit or clone, such as Fong Qingshan's Tree of World Clone or Mosquito Dauren, then one could maximize the benefits. Given the ferocious beast's potential, it might even be able to break through to Venerable Emperor in the future. If it were someone else, including Qin Duo and the others, they would probably make the same choice. After all, The weakest one would be the helper of a peaked divine emperor, and it would be a descendant of a venerable emperor, which meant that it had a certain chance of breaking through to venerable emperor. Especially after refining the clone and the second primordial spirit, anyone who was trapped at the peak of divine emperor would be tempted. If the clone could break through, the bottleneck of the original body would be weakened as well. Moreover, even if the original body couldn't break through, having an emperor-level clone would be no different from breaking through to venerable emperor. In terms of safety, status, and so on, it would be comparable to a real venerable emperor. However, for Fang Qingshan, the loss outweighed the gain. This was because he didn't have to worry about breaking through to venerable emperor. With the timeless arc, as long as he kept improving the timeless arc's grade, with the eternal blessing, breaking through to venerable emperor's bottleneck would be no different from breaking through to chaotic origin, immortal realm, and divine emperor realm in his eyes. As for helpers, he already had the tree of world clone and the mosquito Taoist. Moreover, they had been trained to such a high level and had a great chance to break through to the venerable sovereign realm. Therefore, he didn't mind having one more clone. Chapter 1598. Of course, it was an exaggeration to say that having one more venerable emperor avatar was not a big deal. It should be that having one more peak divine emperor avatar was not a big deal, because it involved not only resources, but also the probability of breakthrough. Speaking of resources, to cultivate an egg to peak divine emperor required a lot of resources. Just look at Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree Doppelganger. Without them, Fang Qingshan's resources would not be exhausted at any time. Of course, without them, Fang Qingshan would not be able to progress so fast and smoothly. And this was only an immortal. So what if he was a divine emperor? Or even an emperor? The amount of resources required was definitely an unimaginable amount of money. As for the probability of breakthrough, although this egg might be a descendant of an emperor, it might also be a descendant of a half-step emperor like the seed of the innocuous fruit tree. And even if it was a descendant of an emperor, it did not mean that it was a descendant of an emperor. It only meant that it had a certain probability of breakthrough, but it did not mean that it would definitely become an emperor. For others, because they had no other choice, they naturally would not let go of even the slightest chance. But Fang Qingshan did not have to do so. Just like the Daoist sect, what about the aptitudes of Daoist Yi, Zhuge Jin, and the others? They also had the potential to become an emperor. So what if they had the resources of the Daoist sect? At least before Fang Qingshan developed the stone gambling skill, it was absolutely a world of difference. And even if Fang Qingshan developed the stone gambling skill before he developed a few level 4 items, it was absolutely impossible for him to compare with the Daoist sect. However, even with the resources of the Daoist sect and the aptitudes of Daoist Yi and the others, no one knew how many years had passed since the fall of the Daoist sect's great ancestor. But the Daoist sect still did not have a venerable emperor. They had to pin their hopes on Fang Qingshan and the timeless Arkansas. This was also why he had just joined the Daoist sect, but there was already a huge amount of resources allocated to him. The Daoist sect's great ancestor even gave him a trace of the emperor-level way, and left him his own cultivation experience and emperor-level cultivation methods. Even with aptitude and resources, one might not be able to become an emperor. Therefore, whether or not this egg could make a breakthrough was still a question mark. If he could break through to venerable emperor, it would be fine. But if he couldn't, he would only be a peak divine emperor. For Fang Qingshan, who was about to break through to divine emperor, the timeless arc would advance to immortal realm, and even ancient realm. It would be a waste of resources and time. However, it was different for Fang Qingshan and Mosquito Dowrin. As long as they had enough resources, they would definitely be able to break through. Because of this, it was better to focus on training him rather than training him separately, who might not be able to break through to the venerable sovereign realm. Therefore, Fang Qingshan was inclined to give the egg to Mosquito Dowrin and let him consume it to increase his cultivation. His main body was about to break through to the divine emperor realm, and the world tree clone had the seed of the innocuous fruit tree, so it might follow soon after. Although Mosquito Dauren had the bloodstone, the best way to use it was to refine the Yuan 2 of Vichi's sword. Therefore, this egg was the best way to increase his cultivation. As for the venomous Fong, it was also a very suitable item to be used as a unit of the eternal divine furnace. Of course, when Fong Qingshan said that it was suitable, he didn't mean that the treasure was suitable, but the type that it represented was suitable. After all, among all the attacking weapons of the Timeless Arc, there were sabers for frontal attacks, drums for sonic attacks, formations for encirclement, coins of treasures for auxiliary attacks, bridge of other shore and passing water lamp for space-time attacks, cauldron of heaven and earth for refining, and red lotus of hellfire for hellfire attacks. However, there were no poisonous attacks. Poison seemed to be inferior to fate, causality, and space-time, and was often rejected as heresy. But as long as it was used well, it would be a handy weapon. It was a pity that this venomous Fong was not a real venomous Fong. It was just a tooth of a poisonous beast that was contaminated with a little poison. Moreover, it was a broken tooth. If this tooth was a real venomous Fong, and it was complete, Fong Qingshan would not hesitate to integrate it into the Timeless Arkansas. But now, it could only be regarded as a top-notch poisonous treasure that was used to refine weapons and spiritual treasures. Perhaps it could be integrated into Mosquito Dauren's Yuan 2 of Vichi's sword. The last upper LV3 treasure was the Dragonbone Heavenly Ship, which was so badly damaged that it no longer looked like it was before. This treasure was undoubtedly the most suitable to be integrated into the Timeless Arkansas. It was also the only way to use it. However, the reason why Fong Qingshan excluded it was not that the Timeless Arc was bad, but that it was too good. After all, the Dragonbone Timeless Arc was so broken that it looked like it would fall apart at any time. But even in this state, it could still be classified as a high-level 3. From this, it could be seen what kind of grade the Dragonbone Timeless Arc was when it was at its peak. At the very least, it far surpassed Fong Qingshan's Nirvana. It could be an immortal, or even an eternal. If it was integrated into the Timeless Arc and inherited its legacy, the two Timeless Arcs would fuse and transform. The Nirvana Arc would be able to improve even further, and the Dragonbone Timeless Arc would be reborn. It had endless potential. Originally, the Timeless Arc's foundation was already unbelievably strong. If it was integrated into the Timeless Arc now, it would be a little inappropriate, just like the two top-notch level 3 treasures. The stronger the foundation, the better. If it was too strong, it would also be a problem for future improvement. The reason why creatures like dragons and phoenixes were harder to break through than ordinary creatures was because their foundation was too strong and the world was balanced. Therefore, the Dragonbone Timeless Arc should be integrated into the Eternal Divine Furnace unit along with the other top-notch level 3 treasures after the Timeless Arc reached Immortal. Therefore, among the 15 treasures that Fong Qingshan had obtained from the Void Stone, the 2 treasures that he had confirmed were the Broken Needle and the Karma Thread. The other 3 treasures were the Tower of Origin, a pair of wings, and a stone. First, the Tower of Origin. It was called the Tower of Origin. Although it was a tower, it did not have the defensive power of the Tianxian Pagoda or the suppressive power of the Demon Ceiling Pagoda. If that was the case, why did Fong Qingshan integrate it into the Timeless Arc? The reason was simple. He valued the Tower of Origin's self-production ability. Truth be told, its function was similar to the 12 zodiacs that Qingshan had obtained back in Eternal World. However, the 12 zodiac beasts produced spiritual energy, whereas the Origin Pagoda produced origin energy. Yes, Fong Qingshan valued the Tower of Origin's ability to produce origin power. He hoped that it could be used as a power source for the Timeless Arkansas. Chapter 1599. The Timeless Arc didn't lack power. With a lightning-gathering tower, it was able to absorb origin energy from the infinite space and time and store it in the eternal pool of lightning. It could be said that even if the Timeless Arc went all out, it could exhaust 10 or more opponents to death. However, it was better to rely on oneself than on others. The origin energy didn't come from oneself, but from the infinite space and the origin of heaven and earth. As the saying goes, be prepared for a rainy day. If, one day, heaven and earth changed, such as the day of doom, the spiritual energy and origin energy of heaven and earth would no longer exist, and the lightning gathering tower would no longer be able to absorb energy from the outside world. Then the timeless arc wouldn't be able to be used without restraint. What if he had a conflict with the source will of heaven and earth? For example, if he wanted to do something against the heavens, or if he was trapped in a formation, or if he fell into some kind of danger zone where he could no longer draw energy from the outside world. Although such a situation was rare, it was not impossible. Plus, there was another problem. Karma was intertwined. As the saying goes, everything in the world nourishes man, but man has nothing to repay heaven. Right now, he was still in the infinite space and in the infinite space. What if, one day, Fang Qingshan made a breakthrough and wanted to leave this place and head to the primordial origin grounds? Then came the problem. Just like leaving the desolation grounds, he needed to sever his karma and return to heaven and earth. Especially spiritual energy, the origin of karma, was of utmost importance. One of the reasons for the arrival of the infinite cataclysm was because there were too many cultivators. The higher one's cultivation, the greater the burden on heaven and earth. When heaven and earth couldn't handle the burden, the spiritual energy and origin energy would be depleted, leading to the day of doom, dusk, and destruction. Therefore, a long time ago, Fang Qingshan had been thinking of creating the timeless arc as a source of energy. However, he never found a good opportunity. Now, with the Tower of Origin, this problem was finally solved. With this item, he would no longer have to worry about the source of spiritual energy. Even if he was trapped in some dangerous place, he would be able to persevere. From this moment on, he would be able to intentionally sever his karma with heaven and earth. After all, Fang Qingshan was very confident that he could leave the all heavens and head for the origin. As for the other wing-type spirit treasure, it was called the Freedom Wings. Just by looking at its appearance, it was easy to guess the function of this treasure. Yes, the main reason Fang Qingshan had chosen this treasure was to increase the timeless arc speed. The timeless arc speed came from three aspects. The first was its propulsion, which was the core of all eternal units. The second was the sail, and the third was the Nirvana bridge. There was no need to mention the effects of the sail. Although the latter was a space spirit treasure, the reason Fang Qingshan had integrated in the first place was because he wanted to use the space-breaking power of the Otherworld bridge to increase his speed. However, as the timeless arc leveled up, it was no longer able to increase the speed of the timeless Arkansas. When he went to the Fallen Dragon's secret realm last time, Fang Qingshan had already felt this drawback. Moreover, speed was related to the power of the Chaos Demonic Horn. The faster the heavenly ship was, the more powerful the collision with the Chaos Demonic Horn would be. The Freedom Wings was a pure speed-type spirit treasure. Its speed was not the fastest in the world, but it was not bound by the rules. It was free, just like the speed of the Kuan Peng and the Golden Crow in the Desolation. With this treasure, the speed of the timeless arc was more than doubled. As for the last spirit treasure, the stone was a power gem. Although it was not comparable to the eternal lotus seed, it was not inferior to the seed of the Wushang fruit tree or even the bloodstone in Mosquito Dorn's hand. It was crystal clear and overflowing with colors. It was engraved with bright and dark Tao patterns. They intertwined with each other and merged into a mysterious character. Although he did not know what it was, he could clearly feel the infinite power represented by this character. That power could destroy and annihilate everything. It was extremely domineering. In the face of this object, Fang Qingshan felt a sense of déjà vu. There was the sky opening mark from Pangu, the five elements, ancient characters from a mortal world, and the lotus character seal that condensed in the palm of his hand when he used the eternal mind lamp technique not long ago. Seeing this object was like facing the origin of heaven and earth and the great path of power. Unfortunately, the role of this power gem was very simple. It could only be used to enhance one's strength. It was said that some power gems could not only enhance one's strength, but they could also enhance one's defense and attack power. Just like the amplification law that Feng Qingshan obtained from the Dao Intense Sect's secret vault, it could increase the user's combat power exponentially. However, a simple power enhancement was already very good for Feng Qingshan. It was enough. As the saying goes, there is nothing that cannot be overcome. With the Freedom Wings and the Power Gem, the Timeless Arts combat power would increase by a lot. In addition to these 3 treasures used for the Eternal Divine Furnace unit, Feng Qingshan also obtained some treasures that could enhance other Eternal Divine Furnace units. For example, the Emptiness Crystal was a very good space-type treasure of heaven and earth. Like the Wormhole Pearl, it contained pure space-type Tao Rhyme. If Yang Mei obtained it, the effect in his hands would not be as good as that of the Bloodstone and Mosquito Dowrin, but it could also greatly advance his cultivation base and the Law of Space. If this thing was used to refine a space-type treasure, it should not be inferior to the Green Willow Staff in Yang Mei's hand. It was extremely sharp and could cut the void. If it was used to devour to improve one's cultivation base, even a God Emperor could improve by a small level. However, obviously, Feng Qingshan would not use it to refine a treasure, nor would he use it to improve his cultivation base. He needed to integrate this thing into the other shore bridge. This was the best way to use it. Another example was the Life and Death Jade Gui. This item ran through yin and yang, alternating between life and death. It was a kind of spiritual treasure that could only be nurtured in a natural place that was of a higher grade than Feng Qingshan's previous dojo, Life and Death Island. It had the same effect as the previous Emptiness Crystal. It could be used to refine spiritual treasures, and it could also be used to improve one's cultivation base. The only difference was that one contained the law of space, while the other contained the law of life and death. If this treasure was obtained before, Feng Qingshan would definitely not hesitate to integrate it into his natal spiritual treasure, the Reincarnation Mirror, even if it did not contain the law of reincarnation, but the law of life and death. However, there was no need for that now, because the Reincarnation Mirror already had a reincarnation fragment. Therefore, Feng Qingshan prepared to integrate this treasure into the gourd of life and death. Presumably, this spiritual treasure would also undergo an extremely mysterious change. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.